The story begins with the hero talking about how he desperately wants to live. The first scene opens in the university hospital where the main character is being briefed about his medical condition. The doctor holds his diagnostic records and the patient's name is revealed to be Kim Isak. Unfortunately, Kim has a rare disease that has never been seen before, and as such, the doctor suggests that the illness will likely be named after him. To show how terrible the situation is for Kim, the doctor suddenly starts offering his condolences while he's still alive, and then goes on to reveal that he likely has only half a year to live at this rate. As you can imagine, this is horrible news for the protagonist, but the sad reality is that there's really nothing he can do about it. After his session with the doctor, Kim walks out of the hospital, and even though he's supposed to have about 6 months left to live, he looks as if he's already a dead man walking. As he makes his way through the crowds on the streets, people stop and stare at him, wondering what the hell is wrong with him, and it doesn't take him long to realize that they're all talking about him. He couldn't care less about that right now because he's still shaken by the fact that he'll be dead in half a year. He can't believe it because it's as if everything is going downhill for him just when his life looked like it was finally going great. For as long as he can remember, all he's ever done is live as a diligent worker ant, so the fact that he's just going to die very soon leaves him extremely confused. Kim is so lost in thought that he crosses the road on a red light, and just when he's about to be run over by the incoming vehicles, someone shoves him off the road to the other side. Even after this, Kim still doesn't realize what just happened because all he can't think about is how unfair it is that he only has a few months left on this earth. What makes his dilemma even more tragic is the fact that he got this terrible news on the same day that he finally won the lottery jackpot. Just thinking about this makes him even more desperate to live. He doesn't want to die, and he's ready to take anything else as long as he can live. Kim picks up the lottery ticket and screams in agony as tears run down his face, begging for someone to save him from death. In that moment, he felt like he was ready for any condition that would mean he'd get to stay alive, but he had no idea what fate had in store for him. Kim desperately wanted to stay alive, but he never expected what would follow. It turns out that in order for him to stay alive, he was reincarnated as a monstrous skeleton. He definitely didn't see this coming and also never suggested that he would be okay with such a transformation. Unfortunately, of all the things that he could have reincarnated into, he ended up being a bald skeleton. It's a really bad one for him because he doesn't even think that he can enjoy the best parts of this body. After the reincarnation, Kim finds himself being forced to battle and kill horrifying monsters in another realm. He's equally a terrifying creature now, and this transformation also granted him some really impressive battle skills along with the mastery of swordsmanship. Here, he's determined to kill all of the monsters, and after taking out several of the beasts, he's finally faced with the last one. By killing the last monster, he successfully completes his mission to exterminate the rebellious forces. This is all pretty unexpected for a person who found out he had only months left to live a while back, so how did Kim end up in this situation? Well, it all started after he was reincarnated as a skeleton, an inferior class summon monster which allowed him to evolve into an undead also known as a lick. This reincarnation brought him to another realm where he became recognized as the Undying Sovereign. He brought prosperity to the demon kind, who were on the brink of ruination before he arrived. As such, the demons adore him, which flatters him a lot because even though he's bald, at least he's the great demon king in this realm. The demons shower him with praise, talking about how his name alone sounds great and evil. It's at this point that we discover that Kim actually goes by King Isak in this realm, but it turns out that he's not really a fan of this name. Apparently, he's gotten tired of telling these idiots that his name is Isak since they've refused to get it right. The Demon King sighs in frustration as he laments about how his numbskulls can't even pronounce his name properly. Fortunately, he won't be seeing them for a while because him completing the last mission means that he can now leave this realm. He bids his demon subjects farewell, and they're shocked to hear that their king is leaving. They ask where he is going, and he informs them that he's leaving to go get what he is owed. His final goal is to be able to eat and even feel pain, and this can only happen if he becomes human again. The scene shifts after he bids his demons farewell, and then he makes his way to the divine realm. The celestial beings here are horrified when the Demon King suddenly appears without and starts climbing up the stars to address all of them. He stands before the gods and informs them that he has taken care of all the factions that have been challenging them, and so he's come to remind them of the promise they made to him in exchange for wiping out the threats. Apparently, they had a written contract which states that they would turn him into a human if he completes the task, and now he's come to claim his reward. The gods are shocked that the Demon King was able to complete the task so quickly and find it hard to believe that he took care of all their enemies. They thought that such an assignment would take him at least 500 years to complete, but they didn't know that Kim's determination is his greatest strength. Now, they're all bewildered, trying to figure out what kind of nut job the skeleton standing before them actually is. They don't know what they're supposed to do now because the whole contract was just a scheme that the higher-ups cooked up to make the Demon King their slave for free. They keep whispering about the situation, so Kim informs them that he can actually hear everything they're saying. He is starting to get a little annoyed because he doesn't get why they're dragging this out so much. They had a deal and he's kept his end of the bargain, so all he wants now is his reward so that he can be on his way. He reminds them of the agreement and makes it clear to them that he's done everything they asked for. At this point, the cunning gold-haired god finally responds to him. With a cheeky smile on his face, he reveals that there's one more thing they need from him. Hearing this, the Demon King is furious because he is starting to think that these guys take him for an empty-headed skull or something. He's so annoyed that he can't even hide it, so he snaps at them, asking if they think that he is just some kind of pushover. Just thinking about this leaves him furious, and if he had blood flowing in his body, it would definitely be boiling. For this, he decides that he'll make them pay, not caring whether they're gods or not. With this in mind, he unleashes a huge blast of power to intimidate the gods, demanding to know if they made him do all that he did when they didn't even have a way to turn him human again. Well, it turns out that this is what happened because as soon as Kim starts to lose his shit, the gods begin to panic. One of them claims that the Demon King must have realized their little scheme, and the other just starts claiming that this is why he was against the plan from the start, wondering why they ever made a contract with a lowly maverick in the first place. Hearing this, Kim is even more pissed, so he interrupts the arrogant god. The Demon King was summoned through a forbidden art, and so he's outside the bounds of the natural laws, which makes him an imperishable being. He can't die from old age because he's an undead, and on top of that, his abilities also make him a threat to the divine realm. Kim knows all of this, so he reminds them just how powerful he is and threatens to make them pay if they can't turn him into a human. At this point, the gods realize that they're about to face his wrath, so they immediately start to beg for some more time. They ask him to just take care of a few more problems for them, which is just annoyingly bold of them when they clearly didn't keep to their word the first time. Now that they've failed to keep their promise, the Demon King informs them that they will have to pay with their lives. That being said, he reveals that it's time for them to become skulls just like him, and then he proceeds to let out a villainous laugh. Just when Kim is about to deal with the lying bastards, he notices something strange happening to him. For some unknown reason, his mana starts to fade and he's suddenly unable to move his body. At this point, the cunning god from earlier reveals that he's the one responsible for this. He mocks Kim's efforts, calling them futile, and then reveals that the one whose name is written in their book will be unable to move no matter who they are. This crafty god wrote Kim's name there to activate the Banish Disaster spell, and reveals that it's the highest class holy art used to seal disasters as powerful as the Demon King. He claims that Kim should have been thankful that they even let him do their bidding. As far as he's concerned, Kim should have never even dared to defy them, and for his actions, they sentenced him to live as a bug for the rest of his days. Hearing this, the protagonist is simply heartbroken that he's about to undergo another terrible transformation. To him, the gods should have at least picked a fuzzy caterpillar or something like that. In response, the cunning god just calls him a lowly creature and wonders why he obsesses so much over hair. He's about to finalize the spell when the tables suddenly turn again. For some reason, the spell doesn't work and the gods become very confused. That's when Kim chimes in laughing. He claims that they should have been quicker and never revealed their hand to him because he'd rather blow himself up than become a bug. In the blink of an eye, the Demon King literally blows himself up in a massive way before the gods can even do anything to stop him. As the dust settles, the gods realize that Kim self-destructed, which makes them wonder if he's insane. Just then, they find a bug crawling nearby and they realize that the spell might have worked. They start to think that it actually activated and sealed the Demon King's soul, so they're pretty relieved. With the Demon King gone, the gods feel that they should be able to regain their powers because every time a demon disappears, they become stronger. As great as this all sounds, they also know that they can't afford to let their guard down just yet because they don't know when another disaster of the same ilk will be born. That being the case, the cunning god decides to create a perfect vessel of a saying in the human realm in order to exterminate every last demon there is and make sure that no disaster like the Demon King ever threatens their existence again. Hearing this, one of the junior gods asks the oldest one if he'll be okay because such a spell would exhaust a lot of his powers. However, he tells the guy not to worry about him and instructs him to select a proper soul to put in the body of the saint. As for the skeleton Demon King, who he believes is now a bug, he decides that he'll torture Kim for all of eternity. While that's happening, the scene shifts and everything goes dark. Here, Kim wakes up and starts to think that he might have lost his mind. He can't believe that he was conned by those gods and assumes that he must have gotten stupid because he was literally a brainless skeleton. Just then, the place becomes really bright, which catches him off guard. At first, he can't feel anything and figures that he doesn't have any hands because he's a bug, but then all of a sudden, he starts to feel some warmth and dampness before realizing that he actually has hands. Strangely, these are baby hands, and in that moment, he realizes that he has become human again, but he has no idea how. He remembers that those bastard gods wanted him dead, so the fact that he's still alive means that they messed up the seal somehow. While he's still wondering what the hell is going on, his thoughts are interrupted by someone who calls him the Holy One. The lady is so excited as she reveals that the saint has opened his eyes, and of course, our boy has no idea what she's talking about. The young man and the lady standing next to his cradle are surprised that he woke up from his nap already, and Kim quickly presumes that these guys must be his nanas or something, but the truth is that these guys aren't here to take care of him. They tell him that he needs to fall back asleep, and that's when he sees the baby bottle filled with poison. The man claims that the holy child needs to rest in peace, so it becomes clear that they're here to kill him at this point. Kim is horrified by this, but all he can do as a helpless baby is cry because he has no idea why he has to die again when he only just got reincarnated. The story continues with the evil nanny trying to force the bottle into Kim's mouth. Just when he tries to feed our little hero the poison, the baby turns his face to the side and literally uses his hand to shove the bottle away. The nanas are stunned when they see this and they can't believe it. They can't understand why the baby isn't eating, and while they're still trying to wrap their heads around this, Kim just turns to the side and pretends to fall asleep. He only just became human again, so there's no way in hell that he'll allow them to feed him such a suspicious substance so easily. As much as he'd like to remain alive in the human realm, another thing that really bothers him is the fact that he doesn't even know how he got reincarnated as a human baby in the first place. He still doesn't know what happened with the gods back in the divine realm, so the current situation is still pretty baffling for him. Just then, the nanas start begging him to eat like the baby he is and try to trick him, but their cover is blown when they suddenly refer to him as Suryazak. Kim's eyes widen in shock when he hears this and he instantly shoots up from the bed, wondering if he just heard right. Sure enough, he did, and he quickly realizes that this is the same name that he was called in the other realm because people there couldn't pronounce his real name correctly. This is the name that the gods used in the Banished Disaster spell to seal him away, so he figures that the reason why the spell didn't work on him was because they spelt his name wrong. That's why he didn't get sealed away and instead got reincarnated into a different body with the same name. He's so excited when he realizes this because he's now sure that the foolish gods failed to seal him away for good, even though they thought that they had gotten rid of him. His little celebration is cut short when the nanas suddenly start forcing him to take the poison in the bottle. They try to hold him down, but he resists them. Unfortunately, his baby strength isn't enough, so they overpower him and finally get him to drink the green juice. As he suspected, the stuff tastes very bad and he immediately confirms that it's a vegetable-flavored drink after only a few sips. Just as he feared, the strange juice starts to affect him and all of a sudden, he can feel something ominous entering his body. His vision starts to blur and the last thing he sees before everything goes dark are the nanas' sinister smiles. The scene shifts after this and we're suddenly taken to the Holy Empire Hela Central East Temple. Here, we get to see the mastermind behind the assassination attempt on the baby. A shady-looking priest is seen walking down the hall as he thinks about how the baby must be meeting his end right about now. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted when another man talks about how lively he seems today. This blonde-haired noble is actually the emperor of the Holy Empire Hela, who goes by the name Alexander Heathcliff Hela. In response, the bishop and his priests bow to the emperor as they greet him and acknowledge him as the empire's son. Without exchanging pleasantries any further, the emperor cuts to the chase and bluntly asks the bishop what business he is coming here. In response, the shady priest quickly claims that they've come to greet the saint candidate of House Joshua. After all, the holy seer must be present in regards to the Holy One. The emperor doesn't seem to be a fan of these guys and he doesn't even bother hiding it. He feels that the bishop makes it sound like a burden by saying that he must be present because it's the saint. He suggests that there would be a serious problem if something went wrong again after the saint candidate was left in the Holy See's care. The bishop becomes very nervous when the emperor says this, but he decides not to admit anything and instead denies knowing anything about that. While he's still trying to deny this, someone suddenly barges into the room. The guard informs them that something bad has happened to the young master. Without wasting another second, the emperor and his guards start running to the young master's room. Alexander bursts into the room to check on his son and the nanas immediately reveal that the baby is completely fine. She talks about how cute he is and points to his plum belly. With a big smile on her face, she claims that the cute baby is such an angel. This is all really shocking because earlier, it looked like they were trying to kill him with poison, but now it's looking like they were just trying to feed him to death. Apparently, the poison didn't work because he's already drunk 15 bottles of the juice and nothing has happened. As you can imagine, the bishop who masterminded the whole thing is shocked when he sees this. He can't believe his eyes because he thought that the baby would be dead by now. The evil priest can't even wrap his head around it because the boy shouldn't be alive after drinking so much of the poison. After all, he knows better than anyone that the content of those bottles isn't just vegetable juice. Nobody knows how the baby survived, so let's rewind a bit and find out what exactly happened. Well, it all started a few minutes ago when the nanas gave him the drink for the first time. He started feeling dizzy and he could also sense the ominous energy entering his body. It was only after a few sips that he realized that it wasn't just any ordinary poison. It's actually holy poison, a devastating poison that destroys the holy power of the members of the clergy. It doesn't have any immediate effects, but because it's poison, it becomes deadly if too much accumulates in the body. With that being said, the fact that he drank 15 bottles already without being dead is just insane. Well, it turns out that there's a small tweak regarding the poison. Apparently, the poison is made from the mana of demons, so as a former demon king, this is just perfect for him. Giving things made from mana to a demon like him is amazing for him. He decides that he'll eat up all of the poison because as far as he's concerned, it's mana baby food. He likes it so much that he starts asking for more and the clueless nanas just keep pumping him with the poison, thinking that they're getting closer to killing him. The baby enjoys it so much that he literally gives the baby a thumbs up while drinking it. The mana absorption is perfect for him and after he's done with it, He starts to think about what he needs to do from now on and decides that he needs to enter the world beyond the conscious mind. Kim wants to explore the deepest part of the unconscious world and get to the source of it so that he can create the mana core. He believes that this place is safe for him, so he gets right to absorbing the mana that he's been fed with. Our boy starts by putting the mana that he absorbed into the mana core since he needs it to be able to use magic later. As such, he starts preparing, but then all of a sudden, a huge explosion ruins everything for him. He's so shocked because that wasn't supposed to happen. After the explosion, he sees a bright white light revealed, which leaves him pretty confused. As far as he knows, a mana core should be one of the 3 primary colors, so he doesn't get why it's white. Besides the color, he feels that there's even a bigger problem, which is the fact that so much power is contained inside the small core that isn't even fully formed yet. It's pretty baffling, but it's also good for him because it appears that the result of his mana absorption is even beyond his expectations. He attempts to go closer to the powerful mana core, and with each step, all he can do is wonder just how many blessings were crammed into this young body of his. He's so impressed and feels that he might even be able to become a much greater monster than he imagined if he manages to grow with this power. As he finally reaches the bright white core, he sees his new name, Isaac, boldly written on it, and without any hesitation, he pushes the survive button beneath it. It reminds him of the desperate desire to survive that was engraved within his soul. Back in his previous life, he wanted to survive no matter what, and in the end, that became the genesis of the Skeleton King. That made him able to create special original buffs and skills. And now, those skills were inherited by this new baby body, which is absolutely amazing for him. Back in the human realm, we see that baby Isaac is now fast asleep, and the evil nanas are anxiously watching him to confirm if he's finally dead after pumping him with several bottles of poison. After staring at him for a while, the lady tells her partner in crime to check the baby and confirm, but Isaac suddenly raises his hand in his sleep, which almost gives the nanas a heart attack. To their surprise, he literally asks for one more bottle of the green juice, requesting that it be stronger than all the ones before. The flashback scene finally ends and we're all caught up with the present. Now, Alexander is in the room as well, and he's pretty relieved to see that nothing bad happened to the child. If only he knows that the saint nearly got assassinated not too long ago. While most people around are relieved, the bishop is extremely nervous now. He notices Isaac staring at him from the cradle, and this makes him very uncomfortable. He knows what the evil priest was in on his assassination attempt, but he decides to play it cool. He feels that he can't afford to be suspicious no matter what, and decides that it's best to just keep a smile on his face and act like he has no idea. So, he does just that and starts smiling all of a sudden, which also manages to piss the bishop off. He's furious that the baby is still laughing because he expected that the child would have been dying as he coughed up blood. The scene shifts and we're taken a few days back at the headquarters of the Holy See. Here, someone reveals that whoever becomes the saint will possess the Holy Empire, and while most people in the story are okay with this, there are those who are not too happy about it. A certain long-haired character is particularly irritated by the thought of those pesky noble families having declared that one of their children to be the saint. He complains about this to the bishop, who seems to be one of his loyalists. The priest tells him not to worry and assures him that they're dealing with the other saint candidates. Hearing this, the man is pleased, but then he also admits that he heard a very unpleasant rumor earlier. Apparently, he also found out that a saint candidate appeared from House Joshua, and he's very annoyed just thinking about it. He's so pissed that he almost crushes the wine chalice in his hand. He knows that House Joshua is the emperor's right hand, so that's some really tough competition. The bishop gets really nervous at this point, claiming that there's nothing they can do about it because he feels that the baby died before they got there. This desperate noble is actually Harry Barrett, the cardinal and head of House Barrett. He reveals that he acted first to ensure the child's death, but now he needs someone to verify the corpse for him. Harry made an attempt on the child's life because he wants to make sure that the saint can only come from his house. As the flashback ends, we see the bishop boiling in anger as he sweats profusely. Lord Barrett told him that the child would be dead, so he doesn't get why that's not the case. The situation is bad for him at the moment because he knows that he can't go back to Harry with such bad news. Alexander admired the boy in his cradle, pointing out his shiny platinum blonde hair, which is the same color of hair that the emperor's found had. He expects the bishop to agree with him, but the priest just tries to advise him against such blasphemy. At this point, Isaac realizes that the man standing above his cradle is the emperor, and he's so taken aback. Alexander continues to admire the child, claiming that he even looks closer to God than the current pope. That being said, he concludes that Isaac must be the final saint candidate, and the moment he says this, our boy is absolutely stunned. He had no idea that he was the saint candidate, and he's finally starting to understand what's been going on. As you can imagine, the bishop isn't happy to see that the emperor is already favoring this child, and so he decides that he can't let it be. With this in mind, he comes up with a mischievous plan and requests permission to inspect the child. Alexander is reluctant to let this happen, so the bishop insists that something is odd about the boy, claiming that there's no way a baby could finish all that vegetable juice. Still, the emperor doesn't get what's so strange about that. While the bishop is working hard to execute his plan, our boy just lies there, wondering how he could be the saint candidate when he was literally the demon king not too long ago. The priest once again requests permission to inspect the child, but the emperor tells him that he can only proceed when someone from House Joshua arrives. At this point, the bishop becomes desperate, and while he's still trying to convince the emperor, our boy accidentally releases some demonic energy from his body. The moment that happens, he already knows he's busted, and sure enough, the sharp bishop senses the demonic energy. He informs the emperor of his discovery and suddenly becomes really confident that he'll successfully ruin the child's chances. Isaac sees the twisted look on the bishop's face and instantly realizes that the bastard noticed what happened. The cunning priest goes on to accuse our boy of being a fake candidate beating Mana and suggests that the inquisitor investigate the child immediately. Our boy curses at the back of his mind because he's afraid that his cover has been blown, but to his surprise, the emperor still defends him. Alexander snaps at the bishop, reminding him that he's speaking to the saint candidate. At this point, the priest uses the opportunity to talk about the candidate from House Berit. He tells the emperor not to worry and claims that the pope already selected the child from House Berit as his saint. Fortunately, Alexander doesn't subscribe to that nomination. In fact, he's annoyed that the pope would select a child from his own house as the saint and considers it a shameless move. While this exchange is going on, Isaac is literally sweating nervously in his cradle because he doesn't get why the bishop is trying so hard to get rid of him. Things get worse for our boy all of a sudden when the bishop picks him up from the bed and orders the priests to invite an inquisitor. Thankfully, just when it looked like the jig was up for our boy, the emperor halts the entire process. He reminds the bishop that House Joshua is the imperial family's closest ally, and as such, he strongly suggests that his child be reassessed at a later date. In response, the crafty bishop claims that he understands, but the look on his face suggests that he has no intention of changing his plans. While still holding Isaac in his arms, he reveals that he spoke to the pope earlier, who mentioned that he would hold the ceremony of investiture for the crown prince only after the saint's selection. This news comes as a big blow to the emperor because he immediately realizes that the pope doesn't plan on officially recognizing his son as the prince unless he agrees with his saint choice. This is a tough spot for the emperor because now he has to choose between this child that he deeply admires and his own son. Still in disbelief, he asks the bishop if this is truly the Holy See's intention, while our boy just concludes that the priest is a son of a bitch. Seeing just how much politics is involved in the whole thing, Isaac starts to feel like he doesn't even want to be the saint candidate anymore. It's clearly way too risky for him, and it would only be a matter of time before his true identity is revealed. Seeing how unsettled the emperor has suddenly become, the bishop offers another proposal, suggesting that they can just inspect the child right now and avoid having to engage in extremely dirty politics later on. The priest suggests using the holy exorcism arts, claiming that the child will be unharmed if he's a normal human, but he also makes it clear that Isaac will be exterminated if he turns out to be a demon. Before the bishop can even finish saying this, our boy lands a mean blow on his face which knocks out a few of his teeth along with some blood. After doing this, Isaac just starts mumbling a whole lot of gibberish which translates to him calling the bishop an arrogant son of a bitch. Seeing that the man is determined to blow his cover, our boy figures that it's best to play along with whatever game he is. With his cheek absolutely throbbing, he winces in pain and wonders how an ordinary bottle can hurt so much. Just then, he notices that the baby is literally glowing and begins to think that this light might actually mean that the child is truly the saint. He did sense some holy energy from the child too, but this one is different, and while he's still trying to wrap his head around it, Isaac hits him with the bottle a couple more times. The pain is unbearable, and after being brutalized by the baby, he confirms that this energy he's sensing is definitely mana. The emperor senses it as well, and he's so excited when he sees the bright light radiating from the child. While that's happening, our boy prepares to make the bottle even tougher with strengthening magic so that he can give the bishop one last hit that he won't forget, all while making sure that he looks like an innocent baby the whole time. Isaac lands the final blow on the old man's head, and it's so painful this time around that the bishop is forced to his knees. Seeing this, the emperor concludes that the priest must be admiring the baby's holy power. After beating the shit out of the old man, our boy notices something strange on his glowing bottle. It turns out that he senses a faint amount of holy power too whenever he uses mana. Mana and holy power are incompatible and normally can't be used together, so he figures that this strange combo must have something to do with that white mana core. Suddenly, the bishop has finally had enough, so he grabs the bottle and tosses it on the floor as he gets back on his feet with the child still in his arms. He then claims that the baby is a heretic and insists that they use the holy exorcism arts immediately. Our boy is just disappointed when he sees that this piece of shit still hasn't learned his lesson. Since the bishop has refused to give up and mind his own business, Isaac decides that it's time to pull out the big guns. He wasn't planning on going this far before, but now he has no choice. The baby suddenly reaches under the priest's sleeve and reveals a very interesting item that the man has been hiding there. It's a strange demon hand with a cross on it, which our boy identifies as the corpse of a sealed high-ranking demon, also known as a totem. This is an artifact that utilizes the characteristics of demons, who eat corpses of other demons and absorb their mana. Our boy was actually keeping this totem on him at all times to use against demons if he ever encountered them, and so it was pretty easy for him to detect one nearby. The bishop is bewildered that the baby knew about his totem, and before he can do anything about it, Isaac throws it to the floor, activating its magical energy. As the mummified hand begins to unravel, our boy makes it clear that this is all happening because the old man kept coming after him, and now he'll have to face the consequences of his actions. With the snap of his finger, Isaac activates the totem, which brings the demonic monster to life in seconds. As the beast awakens, our boy gets really excited because now he'll get to watch the filthy bishop try and parry this threat all by himself. The story continues with the monster coming to life, leaving everyone around absolutely terrified. None of them are able to understand how a shadow lick of all creatures could be here. The emperor is particularly furious at the bishop because he never thought the priest would be dumb enough to let a demon loose in the temple. Clearly, nobody saw what Isaac just did, so the bishop is forced to take the blame. He tries to defend himself, claiming that it was the baby that threw the totem, but Alexander just dismisses his excuse, reminding him that a totem is just an object used to seal a demon beast. As far as he's concerned, a baby is incapable of activating the artifact, and so he's convinced that the bishop is responsible. As if the situation wasn't already annoying enough for the priest, the emperor suddenly orders all of his forces to focus on protecting the saint candidate from the demon beast. As such, several guards rush to take Isaac away from the bishop, all oblivious to the fact that the kid is the mastermind. Our boy just laughs at the old man as the guards carry him to safety. He taunts the bishop and patiently waits to see how the old man will deal with the demon on the loose. All of a sudden, the shadow lick starts chanting something that instantly changes the situation. It turns out that this hooded demon that our boy just brought back to life is actually mandated to kill the saint, who just happens to be him in this life. So, when he hears the demon saying this over and over, the smug look on his face disappears and is instantly replaced with a look of confusion. The shadow lick charges at the guards trying to protect him, but even though the monster is absolutely terrifying, they all stand their ground, determined to protect the young lord. Isaac has no idea what the hell is wrong with the creature because he literally saved its life and now it's trying to attack him. As much as he should be worried, he feels pretty relaxed because he believes that the paladins should be able to protect him from the demon. Unfortunately, it couldn't be more wrong about this because the next thing he sees is the first guard getting knocked out with ease, which makes him wonder if the guy is actually a paladin. Just like that, the monster continues to close in as it keeps screaming its desire to kill the saint. The demon wipes out the guards easily and doesn't take long before it's just Isaac and the last paladin, who looks like he's about to shit his pants. At this point, he subjugates the demon first before it kills everyone in the temple. After all, no one would notice him using his demonic magic in a situation like this. He feels a little disappointed that everyone is trying to kill him in this new life and you only just got here. He's even more annoyed at this shadow monster because he is the one who brought it back to life and yet it's trying to kill him. Just when it looks like it's about to finish him off, he uses a powerful spell on the foolish shadow lick and instantly reveals his true demon king nature to it, leaving it terrified and subjugating it instantly. The creature holds its attack at that moment and our boy follows up with another huge expression of his magic. He starts glowing brightly and the magical energy radiating from his body is so powerful that it leaves the emperor and everyone else watching in a daze. They're bewildered by his power and the shadow lick is also overwhelmed by it, so much so that it tries to make a run for it. The paladins notice that the demon is trying to escape, but none of them do anything about it because they probably prefer it running away than having to face it. After the shadow lick escapes, the emperor and his guards immediately conclude that the young lord just used holy power. They just witnessed Isaac drive a greater demon out of the temple with his magical power, and this just makes Alexander even more endeared to him. The guards surround the child and begin to shower him with praise. The one carrying him claims that the boy is so amazing at such a young age, and the other states that it's just the kind of thing expected of the young lord. While they're all drooling over him, the baby in question suddenly notices his glowing with even more magical energy and he finally realizes that this is actually holy power. It's really baffling for him because this can only mean that he's run out of mana. Either that's the case or this strange body is somehow turning his mana into holy power. Isaac isn't too happy about this development because he doesn't know how he's going to accumulate mana now, and that might be a problem because the Holy Empire already lacks mana. While he's still pondering on this, the bishop regains consciousness. The guards try to help him up but he just snaps at them and keeps trying to go after our boy. He insists that the child is a heretic that uses the powers of demonkind and he's furious that such a person made it into the Holy Empire. Even after everything that has happened, this bishop is still determined to prove that the kid is not the true saint. He's ready to do whatever it takes to make sure that the emperor agrees with the pope's choice, so he offers to prove that Isaac is a demon and uncover his real identity with an exorcism. As you can imagine, the emperor has had enough of the priest trying to discredit the not-so-innocent baby. He's pissed that the bishop is accusing the saint candidate of being a demon, and on top of that, Alexander still thinks that he's the one that let the greater demon loose in the temple. With everything that has gone down today, the emperor makes it clear that he will not let this matter go. Right now, he doesn't even care if the old man is from the Holy See. Seeing how mad Alexander is, the bishop begins to panic because he knows that it won't take long for him to find out about the infiltrator if he becomes suspicious. If that happens, then the Holy See could also be in trouble, so this cunning priest decides that he must do anything to take responsibility for what happened so that he can protect his family, even if it means that he'll be executed. The only way you make sure of this is by killing the saint candidate of House Joshua and taking the fall, and he's determined to do this. With this in mind, he activates his blood spirit animal and charges at the baby. Our boy sees the incoming attack, but he's not bothered in the slightest. In fact, he just looks disappointed that the dumb bastard is finally showing his true colors after so long. He also finds it really shameful that the bishop even thinks that he can kill the former demon king with such a weak attack. Well, this is what our boy is feeling until he suddenly remembers that he no longer has any mana left on him. His eyes widen in horror as the realization hits him, because now it's almost too late for him to do anything or come up with another plan. All he can do now is watch as the massive wolf monster charges at him with blistering speed. Just when it looks like his time in this body might finally be up, a magical attack comes out of nowhere and incapacitates the bishop. Our boy is surprised to see this because he has no idea where that counterattack just came from. While he's still trying to process what just happened, a white-haired figure appears, demanding to know who dares try to lay a hand on the direct lineage of Joshua. It turns out that this guy who just saved our boy is actually Rilai, the seventh son of House Joshua, who came just in the nick of time with the other knights. Seeing that the bishop was responsible for the assassination attempt, Rilai orders his execution. The bishop tries to resist, but the Joshua knight sees him immediately, so he just starts begging until he's dragged out of the scene. As for all the others in the temple, Rilai instructs them to show their manners, so they all bow down to pay respect to the young master of House Joshua. Afterward, Rilai apologizes to our boy for taking so long, and the kid is just amazed by the fact that the Joshua Knights are even better than the Imperial Knights. The seventh son reveals that he brought a little present for Isaac, and even before it's revealed, our boy starts wondering if it's gold. Unfortunately, it's not gold, and it also happens to be the worst present they could have gotten him, because it's literally a figurine of the Skeleton King being beheaded. As if that's not already disturbing enough, Rilai reveals that they also have a figurine of the Demon King being burned to death. That's not even the worst one, because there's also a figurine of the Saintess crushing the Skeleton King. As you can imagine, our boy would very much prefer to pass on these presents because they might actually give him nightmares if he keeps them. Anyway, since he can't talk yet, all he can do is stare at the toys with horror laced all over his face. The Joshua Knights must have missed the young master a lot while he was away, because they can't seem to get enough of his cuteness. While they're busy fawning over how pretty the baby is, all our boy can think about is how difficult it will be for him to survive in a crazy show like this that's obsessed with killing the Demon King in the most horrible ways. He's so lost in thought that he doesn't even realize when a tear runs down his face, and when the guards see it, they just conclude that he likes the figurine so much that he was pushed to tears. The knights are convinced that the young lord likes the present so much, but in reality our boy is just horrified by the thought of having to live with these guys. He can't even imagine how he's supposed to survive in this crazy family. While thinking about this, something crosses his mind all of a sudden. He recalls the Joshua name and realizes just how familiar it actually is. Our boy remembers that he's actually heard this name before in his previous life as the Demon King. It turns out that the saintesses that came to end him while he was a skeleton demon were actually from the Yusha family. They came after him several times, and based on what our boy remembers, they were all in Joshua something, so to think that he's actually from the family of the saintess is just crazy for him. Not only is he the saint candidate all of a sudden, but he is also a descendant of the same family that is obsessed with trying to kill him. Just thinking about this makes him wonder what wrongs he must have committed in his past life to be out in such a sticky situation. Our boy only got reincarnated, but he is already tired of these damn Joshuas. While he's deep in thought, we see that the Joshua Knights are still trying to deal with the evil bishop. The All-Man keeps resisting, so the knights try to shut him up. Regardless, he keeps cursing at them, claiming that he knew they were all heretic bastards. He angrily asks them where they brought the baby from, and vows to uncover Isaac's true identity. Right now, the bishop looks like he's already lost his mind, because he's yelling at the top of his lungs with a deranged look on his face. He claims that they brought a monster into the temple and accuses the Joshua house of being insane. While he's saying all sorts of trash and talking about how the baby will end the Joshua bloodline, one of the knights unsheathes his sword and slits the bishop's throat in the blink of an eye. As you'd expect, this ruthless knight is none other than Rilai, who stands over the dying priest, telling him to be grateful for the benevolence of Joshua that spared his neck after he spouted that nonsense. Seeing what just happened, our boy is pretty taken aback because he didn't know that the knight was this useful. The guy literally slashed the bishop's neck just because he insulted the Joshua family. After witnessing this, Isaac is so surprised to see that the white-haired knight has the confidence to even take in the Holy See. Just then, one of the other knights comes around with a blindfold to cover the baby's eyes, feeling that the young lord should only have to witness good things and not horrifying stuff like an execution. Seeing how soft these guys are, Isaac is just a little annoyed. He feels that they're all crazy and starts to reconsider what he said about them being useful. The more he thinks about these guys, the more stuff he recalls about them. He suddenly remembers that the blue Joshuas were pretty strong and that his subordinates would freak out whenever they saw the blue ones. The knights in question are still trying to make the baby interested in the figurines, which just pisses him off. Before he can get any more frustrated, the emperor chimes in, stating that his family owes this baby a debt. After all, he literally just aced the temple from a deadly shadow lick. With this in mind, he calls on Sir Rilai, asking him to tell the head of House Joshua that the imperial palace wants to raise the boy. Surprisingly, the white-haired knight doesn't agree with this idea. He feels that Alexander jokes too much, and while he's dismissing the suggestion, Isaac gets all excited by the idea of being scouted by the imperial palace. Seeing that the young knight doesn't look forthcoming, the emperor tries to convince him otherwise, reminding Sir Rilai that the Holy Empire will target the boy internally and externally. While it's true that Joshua is powerful, Alexander doesn't think that the Blue Faith, the current knights of the house, have what it takes to protect the child. The seventh son is taken aback by this, and for a second he is left speechless. This statement makes our boy very curious, and he begins to wonder what the emperor is talking about. Isaac leans closer so he can listen properly, and that's when he hears the emperor say that the Pope will disapprove of the boy. The color of his hair is symbolic of the ancestors of the Holy Empire, and that's not even the worst part, because the Skeleton King seems to be after the next saint candidate. All of this sounds pretty baffling to our boy because he's literally the Skeleton King, and if the emperor is right, then it means he would have to be afraid of himself, which doesn't really make any sense. His thoughts are interrupted when he suddenly hears Sir Rilai apologizing to Alexander a second time. Apparently, nothing the emperor just said is enough to change his mind, so he politely insists that the child be raised by House Joshua. Isaac is surprised to hear this, and he's even more surprised when Sir Rilai confidently states that Joshua can deal with the Pope and the Skeleton King. He has a strong feeling that the previous Saintess Melissa would be very happy if they're able to meet the Skeleton King again, and the emperor agrees with him. That being said, Sir Rilai goes on to say that he couldn't possibly leave the direct descendant of the sentence Melissa in the imperial palace. While the knight is trying to make its point, our boy is taken aback for a second because he recognizes this name and remembers that he actually fought a certain Melissa right before he went to the divine realm. Just thinking about her makes Isaac freak out because he remembers that she was the crazy sentence who also happened to be the toughest to deal with. To think that he's a saint candidate born in the sentient family is already stressful enough for him. It gets worse because on top of that he's also really the direct descendant of the Demon King. At this point, all he can do is freak out and scream at the back of his mind as he wonders why his life is so messed up. So, we have been hearing a lot about saints, and also what exactly is a saintess. Well, it turns out that the gods that lost to the Skeleton King every time they wanted to win so badly finally created a weapon with all their efforts to close up a mace sent by the gods to smite evil. The lion of the battlefield that wields holy light. The greatest light of the Holy Empire and the highest ranking knight. Due to the overwhelming power of the saintess, people believed that the Skeleton King had seen his final days. This warrior of the gods had attack and defense close to death of celestial beings. She had cockroach-level survival, which means that she was almost unkillable. She also had his self-destruct mechanism in case she needed it, and with every generation she got stronger. Even with all of these skills and abilities, the Skeleton King remained merciless and was able to always defeat her. With all of this in mind, our boy recalls how he has never actually killed a saintess because it's not good for him anyway. If a saintess dies and the holy power goes back to the gods, they can just send an upgraded next version saintess. That's how they had been doing it for the longest time, and it was like a walk in the park for him. But the last saintess, Melissa, was really strong to beat. She was so powerful that he almost even died during the fight, so to think that he's now the descendant of someone who hates his true identity so much makes him very worried. The conversation between the knight and the emperor resumes at this point, with Sir Rilai pointing out how the saintess lives only for the destruction of the Skeleton King, stating that Joshua produces those saintesses and carries out the will of the gods. As such, he's confident that the Joshua family has the ability to protect the child. Hearing this, the emperor is a little pissed because he knows that the knight is making a lot of sense. He's left speechless for a while because he doesn't really know how to counter the point. Just then, one of his paladins chimes in and sides with the emperor. The guy points out how numerous saintesses have been martyred by the Skeleton King, but Isaac just feels bad when he hears them saying this again because he didn't even kill any of the saintesses. The paladin resumes his rant, stating that the Skeleton King once banished a saintess to a labyrinth just because he thought that she wasn't good enough to fight. This is another false accusation that our boy wishes he could clarify because he definitely didn't banish her. What actually happened was that he let her go, but it turns out she was bad with directions and ended up getting herself lost. Apparently, there were 5 other saintesses who died of stress-related diseases after facing the Demon King, and as you can imagine, Isaac refuses to take the blame for this one too because he feels that they should have just gone to the hospital or something if they were sick. Our boy starts to get pretty uncomfortable as he listens to the whole exchange, and while he's freaking out, Sir Riley just tells him not to worry, claiming that House Joshua has heard all the stories and doesn't care about the curse. At this point, Isaac calms down for a second because even though he's not okay with all the things they've been saying, he's very curious about what this curse is all about. Sir Riley lifts the baby up, admitting that they are all thankful for his birth, but then again, he reveals that there's one more thing they wish from the child. Apparently, all they want from our boy Isaac is that he doesn't grow up to be like the terrible Skeleton King, which is going to be pretty difficult considering the fact that he was actually the previous Demon King. The pressure on him is something else, and even though he just got reincarnated into this world, he still feels that he owes his parents, who he doesn't even know yet, an apology because everyone already believes that he was a bad person. The Emperor is still determined to have the new saint candidate raised under his care, so he pleads with Sir Riley to reconsider his decision. It's been 150 years since the Skeleton King has been sealed away, and so the Emperor is afraid that the demons have become more powerful in that time. On the other hand, Isaac is just bewildered by the fact that it's been over a century since he was sealed away. He figures that Saintess Melissa must have died long ago since she was already 50 years old the last time they fought. Alexander continues his speech, talking about how the saint is a great asset for the Holy Empire to increase its power, and as such, he believes that the boy is also very important to the Imperial Palace too. Furthermore, there's no Saintess in Joshua currently because it's been a year since the last Saintess gave birth to the boy and disappeared with the father. For most people, the craziest part about this would be the fact that both parents ran away, but Isaac is more horrified by the fact that his mother was the Saintess. Despite Alexander's best attempts, the white-haired knight refuses to budge on his stand. Even though he might be right about the Saintess being nowhere to be found, Riley is confident that the matriarch still lives one, and he's even more certain that Joshua can protect the child. While the knight is doing his best to win this debate, the boy in question is busy trying to make sure that he gets all the surprises out of the way. As far as he's concerned, nothing else can be more shocking than finding out that his mother is a saintess. Unfortunately, he's wrong because there are even more shocking surprises in store. All of a sudden, he learns that Dame Melissa is currently out to destroy the Skeleton King's subordinates and will be back soon. It turns out that the Saintess Melissa happens to be his grandmother, who would definitely be expecting to see her grandchild when she returns. Sir Riley points this out, hoping that the Emperor finally gives up, but Alexander is persistent. He feels that it will take a lot of time before Melissa is back, and while he's still talking, he notices Isaac acting weird. Apparently, our boy is freaking out because he just learned that his arch-nemesis is still alive after 200 years and now also his grandmother. Right now, our boy is pretty vulnerable because he's still just a baby, so he is afraid that he might get smited by Saintess Melissa if she finds out that he's the reincarnation of her greatest enemy. Other people might be okay with this discovery, but he knows Melissa far too well and knows that she's dangerous enough to take him out even though he's just an innocent baby. Knowing that he probably won't survive in the Joshua house, he makes up his mind to stay with the Emperor. All of a sudden, he starts leaning over to Alexander, gesturing for the nobleman to carry him. Of course, the Emperor quickly reads this and suggests that Isaac wants to go to the Imperial Palace, but Sir Riley claims that the child is just being clingy and nothing more. With the baby now happily in his arms, he assures the knight that the Imperial Palace can provide a lot for the young lord. He feels that it's better for the child because even though Joshua has produced many saintesses over the years, they have never actually raised a boy saint, which means they have no experience with that. Unfortunately, Sir Riley isn't ready to let go of the child just yet. He pulls Isaac back and claims that the boy will grow up to become an exorcist knight that vanquishes evil. And since House Joshua is a family that raises the greatest exorcist knights, Riley is confident that the kid is in good hands. As for Isaac being the first saint ever, the knight reminds Alexander that the imperial family has no experience with that either. At this point, both men are desperate to keep the child and they start to forget their manners. They start dragging the kid like a toy, and our boy concludes that they're all crazy. The paladins on the side are extremely worried that the baby will be hurt real soon. Both men are fighting to decide the boy's future, but they don't even know that he's already made this choice. Isaac wants to go to the Imperial Palace because he wants to survive, and on top of that, he has been sensing the light of survival from the Emperor since they first met. With this in mind, he radiates the light to reveal his decision, and the Emperor is glad to see that the young lord made the wise choice. The scene shifts and we catch up with the bishop, who is about to be executed. The old man claims that he's innocent and insists that the child used mana, which means that he's a spawn of the demons. Unfortunately for him, the hooded men that he's kneeling before don't seem to agree with him. They remind him that holy power is from the gods themselves, and going by what he just told them, he's suggesting that the gods gave holy power to a lowly demon. Such a statement is blasphemy, so the leader of the group takes out his sword and advances toward him, which leaves the bishop terrified. He tries to explain that it was mana he saw and not holy power, but the executioner isn't any less upset. He reveals that the holy city calls that kind of talk blasphemy and then proceeds to take the bishop's head off with his sword. The leader of these hooded figures suggests that they form another assassination squad, but the young one feels that there is no need, since the emperor will want to take the child. He believes that they will have plenty of opportunities in the Imperial Palace. As the meeting goes on, our boy starts to sense that someone somewhere is talking about him, and that's when one of the hooded men concludes that the child will not survive this time around. The scene changes, and the next thing we see is that our boy is currently on his way to Joshua for some reason. He's being carried back there in a heavily guarded carriage, but he has no idea why that's the case since he clearly chose to stay in the Imperial Palace and not House Joshua. Well, it all started a few days ago, back in the temple when the Emperor and Sir Rilai were desperately fighting over who would get to raise the saint candidate. In the scene, Sir Rilai starts giving off a really blinding light, and the boy can only wonder why it's so strong. He is still in the middle of a debate, and then all of a sudden, the white-haired knight starts talking about how Joshua isn't a good environment to raise the child. He feels that the Emperor must think that they're a house that only houses monochores and the corpses of demons, but he wants to prove him wrong. Isaac watches carefully and starts to recognize this light as the survival origin shining. This would mean that he stands a better chance of surviving in Joshua than in the Imperial Palace. The knight claims that the most precious thing they have is the body of the Skeleton King, and when Isaac hears this, he's so shocked. He can't believe that they have his body. As far as he's concerned, the knight should have started with that because that's definitely enough reason for him to follow them to Joshua. In the blink of an eye, he changes his mind and starts leaning over to Sir Rilai, and just like that, he finds himself being transported to Joshua. During the journey, he looks out the window and starts to feel like he's giving up his life in the palace to go to the military, but then again it can't be helped since this will help him regain his old body. His old body is one that he refined and accumulated mana in, so much mana that it's enough to fight against the gods even. Isaac feels that if he can just get his body back, then getting to rank 10 will be nothing for him. Besides, it's the first time that he saw the light of the survival origin shine that brightly. For the lights to be that bright, he's certain that following this white-haired uncle to Joshua will definitely benefit him greatly in regards to his survival. Inside the carriage, one of the guards asks Sir Rilai why the forces of the Holy See are still gunning for the young master. It turns out that the boy is also pretty curious to find out the answer to this because he doesn't understand why he is such a big deal to them. At this point, the knight reveals that it's because the gods have given the prophecy that the saint will be taken in as the son of a god. As you can imagine, this is really shocking news to the boy. This means that Isaac will become the next pope, and the knight confirms this, claiming that this is the reason why House Berit is so desperate to birth the saint. Isaac starts to freak out a little thinking about what he just heard. The Pope happens to be the strongest cleric who uses rank 10 holy spells. He is practically the king of all clerics and paladins, and an absolute being whose power rivals even that of this holy empire's emperor. House Berit, happy birthday to the Pope for 4,000 years. But now that the Pope's position will be taken by a saint, it's understandable that they would be up in arms as well. Just then, the two men in the carriage are interrupted when the driver comes around, informing them that they've encountered a problem even though they've arrived at the duchy. Apparently, the gate is being blocked by a few guards led by a ginger-haired fellow who tells the visitors that they will not be entering the duchy. Sir Rilai is furious when he hears this, so he jumps out of the carriage as quickly as he can to give the guys out there a piece of his mind. The white-haired man is extremely angry at David and dares to say that they do not recognize the insignia of House Joshua. At this point, it's pretty obvious that these men are intentionally blocking the way because they actually know that these travelers are from House Joshua. The reason why these guys are not going to let them enter is the fact that they need to eliminate the child when they inherit the blood of the saintess. In the blink of an eye, these guards are revealed to be powerful demons who set this trap to intercept the knights and kill the baby. When the paladins realize that they're being ambushed by demons, Isaac is extremely annoyed, and not just because they're wasting his time, but also because he clearly remembers putting a ban on attacking human territories while he was still the Skeleton King. He figures that this behavior must be the fault of the new demon king that came after him. The ginger-haired demon calls out the humans, and then reveals that their glorious king has commanded that all saints and saintesses be killed. Hearing this, Isaac confirms that a new demon king did take over, but then he's shocked when he hears that they've come to kill the saint in the name of the great Lord Isaac. This catches our boy off guard because it means they're still his subjects, but the problem here now is that he doesn't remember telling these bastards to do anything like this. The leader of this demon gang tells the knights that their lives might be spared if they just hand over the child. Being a man of action, the knight's response to this threat is blasting one of the demons into oblivion. As the ashes fall to the ground, the leader of the demons calls him a cowardly paladin. But he finally speaks up and promises the guy that he won't be dying an easy death from speaking such nonsense in front of him. He points his glowing sword at the demons and sternly tells them to listen closely. Sir Rilai vows that Joshua will destroy all evil for the sake of protecting all the small things in this world. And just like that, all the other knights of the Blue Faith follow his lead and lift their sword. They vow to chase the demons to the ends of hell and destroy every last one of them, including their wicked Skeleton King, who is now forcing his subordinates to their deaths just because he wishes to escape morality. Of course, the demons are pissed that the humans would insult their demon king Isaac like that, so they charge at the knights to begin the battle, claiming that everything they're doing is for the demon king's revival. As soon as Sir Rilai sees the attack coming, he jumps out of the way with the child before the demons can get to them. The knight begs the young master to forgive him for the chaos, but all our boy can think about right now is who the hell is impersonating him. The knight carries our boy to safety and then hides him in a bush to keep him safe. He tells Isaac to wait there for a while and then creates a protection barrier around him. Our boy runs his hand on the shield and realizes that even high-ranking demons won't be able to break through it, so he admits that it's a pretty impressive spell. The fact that nothing from the outside can get in also means that anything inside the protection barrier can't get out. With this in mind, he decides that it's time to activate his survival origin and unleash magic. He calls on those who are both magic and living, and it's at this point that we're introduced to Whisper, the observing one. The living shadow cloud heeds his calls and greets him, addressing Isaac as his great lord. The creature is so excited to see the Skeleton King again and almost jumps on him, but our boy quickly prevents this and warns it to stay quiet so that they don't get caught. Hearing this, the shadow demon calms down and admits that he was afraid that he won't ever see his great lord again. In response, Isaac admits that he also thought it was the end for him. It's been a while since he saw Whisper made of the sapient detection magic. This is the guy that the Skeleton King created because he couldn't be bothered keeping up detection magic in the middle of a fight. Whisper somehow gained consciousness at some point and Isaac feels that it's pretty cute. This shadow demon is so in love with his master and concludes that the Demon King is still the same as ever. He congratulates our boy for mercilessly stealing the body of an infant because that's what he thinks happened. Of course, our boy doesn't really appreciate this assumption, but Whisper doesn't seem to care. He's quite pissed that those dirty bastard gods dared to touch his master and put him in a disgusting baby's body. At this point, Isaac gets fed up with the blabbermouth, so he tells Whisper to just focus on looking for enemies. Without any hesitation, the demon initiates enemy detection. He checks the 100-meter radius in his current state and finds out that there are a total of 88 enemies that are all demons. That's a lot of enemies, but Whisper is confident that none of them will be able to lay a hand on the Great Lord. On the other hand, our boy is a bit worried that there are that many because it's almost like they're trying to start a war. Isaac feels that it will be troublesome if the security in this territory increases. It will be even more difficult calling for his subordinates as well. At this rate, he is afraid that he has no choice but to deal with them himself before they're noticed by House Joshua. Even if he has to use all the mana he's accumulated until now, our boy is determined to deal with these enemies. While he's still bracing himself to join in the fight, Whisper suddenly senses something strange. It turns out that the enemy count decreases to 51 so quickly. The shadow creature reveals that the enemy forces are rapidly being culled. The number drops to 31 in a flash. At this point, even Isaac is alarmed because he doesn't even know how that's happening. While he's still trying to wrap his head around that, Whisper informs him that the count has dropped to 13. We get to see what's going on the battlefield. There, one of the paladins calls out to Sir Rilai, warning him that something seems to be coming their way. At this point, the white-haired knight orders his men to take up a defensive formation. There are only 4 demons left on the battlefield, so they try to retreat. Just then, Whisper arrives at the scene, so they assume that their comrade has come to join them so that they can kill the saint today. They start chanting, but just then they think that reinforcements have arrived to help them out. Whisper annihilates them completely. The human warriors are stunned when they see the Shadow Lick helping them wipe out the demons. Isaac is so excited that he could join in the fight, but then all of a sudden, everything goes south when the Shadow Lick from before appears and starts threatening the Joshua Knights for daring to touch his master. He grows so big all of a sudden, and when our boy's eyes what he's up to, he's so shocked because that's the last thing he expected. He roars at the knights, telling them to forfeit their lives, and this sends our boy into a state of panic. He wonders what the hell is wrong with the Shadow Lick, and then turns to the knights, scolding them for trapping him in the body of a lowly child because that's what he thinks happened. Since Isaac was the one to free him, all of Shadow Lick's twisted affection for him suddenly exploded. The Joshua Knights are so terrified because they have no idea what the hell is going on, and that's when the Shadow warns them not to even look at the boy with their disgusting eyes. He threatens to tear their eyes out if they even think about looking at Isaac. At this point, you would think that our boy's cover has been blown, but it turns out that the humans aren't able to understand the Shadow Lick because he speaks a different language. Our boy enters the scene and realizes that this bastard has figured out that he's the Skeleton King. It's annoying, but he also admits that the guy's effort in following him is commendable. As you can imagine, the Joshua Knights are not intimidated by the massive Shadow Lick. Sir Rilai orders his men to prepare for battle, and they do just that. Meanwhile, Isaac is afraid that this Shadow Lick will destroy his lifeline, which is his super rich mana core. He tries to relay the message, but it just comes off as babbling, and Sir Rilai can't understand him either. The white-haired knight tries to comfort the young master, telling him to stay calm while he resolves the threat. He's interrupted when the Shadow Lick starts laughing all of a sudden. The big black creature is so excited that his master has finally recognized him. Seeing this, one of the other knights becomes pretty nervous because he's afraid that the Shadow Lick is displaying hostility. Just as they suspected, the creature suddenly charges at them, but it's not actually trying to kill them right now. Its main target is Isaac because it wants to save the boy from the seal. Before Sir Rilai and the others can even do anything to intervene, the Shadow Lick reaches Isaac. Our boy then orders the creature to start by breaking the protective barrier, which it does easily in the blink of an eye. Once Isaac is out of the ball, he follows up by telling him to stop messing around and get some rest. The Shadow Lick is so shocked when he receives the command, but there's really nothing he can do, so he obeys and finds himself sucked back into the totem. As you'd expect, the knights are absolutely dumbfounded when they see what just happened, and as the demon hand falls to the ground, they realize that this little kid just totemized a demon kin. The scene shifts after this, and the next thing we see is a big celebration for the young lord. The knights announce to everyone that Isaac totemized a demon the first try, which makes them conclude that he is absolutely incredible. He used a holy spell that only those who are at least as powerful as a saintess or cardinal can use. At least that's what they think. The truth is that our boy actually used mana, but Sir Riley is convinced that it was a holy spell of totemization. However, he also finds it off that he can't feel any holy power from the kid. The seventh son is really torn about the whole thing, but most of the other knights aren't concerned. For all they know, they just witnessed the young lord's true worth revealed during a time of emergency. Another thing that Riley finds pretty suspicious is how the Shadow Lick rushed toward Isaac earlier. He feels that the creature must have felt endangered and rushed to remove the source of the power. The white-haired knight is very suspicious about everything, but the other paladins are so obsessed with the boy, rambling on about how he is definitely the saint. Thinking about this for a second, Sir Riley figures that it's actually true. After all, even the Shadow Lick came here aiming for the child, so even if he isn't the saint as they all believe, there's definitely something special about him. Even so, Sir Riley is not exactly happy that it had to be a young boy who has the curse of the Skeleton King. Just then, the captain of the Blue Order Knights talks about how they shall protect the child because he will grow up to be the future of Joshua. At this point, Riley finally realizes that he was being foolish all along because he was only afraid of the Skeleton King's curse and didn't consider the fact that the boy will uplift the house of Joshua. Now that his eyes have opened, he carries the baby and suggests that it's time for them to go home because he has many talents and they will raise him to become an incredible holy knight. Isaac is pretty okay with not even becoming a knight because all he wants is for them to give him back his body when they get there. The knight vows to protect the boy no matter the cost, even though it's pretty clear that he won't live very long, which shocks our boy. He is confident that the boy's name will be spread far and wide across the continent. Riley lifts him into the air and he starts to freak out because he just heard something really disturbing. Unfortunately, the knight assumes that the baby is just excited about becoming a knight of the blue faith. The white-haired man promises to start teaching him how to curse the dishonorable Skeleton King as soon as they get home. Of course, this pisses off the young master, who confirms that these guys are definitely bastards. The scene changes and we're taken to the Joshua Duchy. As soon as they enter the place, Isaac is absolutely furious because these Joshua bastards were viciously tearing up the Demonkin, but they're really living the high life over here. He's overwhelmed by the whole thing and wonders how much it would have cost to build this place. Our boy remembers how he worked himself ragged trying to do whatever he could to feed his kids. Even Whisper is blown away by how magnificent the duchy is. He admits that it's on a completely different level from their shabby palace. The gap is so much that they would even be able to buy 10 Demon King castles if they just sold a few of the sculptures in the duchy, and of course, this annoys our boy a lot since it's actually true. Sir Riley officially welcomes him into the Joshua residence, the place where exorcism and monster slaying began on the continent. He carries the baby and tells him to look out the window, showing him some other kids outside. He assures Isaac that he'll be just like those kids when he's older. Our boy takes a closer look and sees the young knights in training beating the shit out of a puppet posing as the Skeleton King. This just goes to show how much hatred this family has for the Demon King, and even though he's shaken by it at first, he shrugs off the feeling, because he's confident that he can burn the Emperor alive and take over the place now that he has infiltrated the Holy Empire. Whisper chimes in at this point, teasing our boy for holding a grudge against kids despite being the Demon King. In response, he just tells the Black Cloud to shut the hell up and search the surroundings. Without wasting a second, Whisper gets right to it, and it doesn't take long for him to find something. Isaac is amazed by the sight before him because he's never seen so many mana cores gathered in one place. Whisper is equally blown away by this, and it makes him wonder just how many Demonkin these guys have killed. After a while, they arrive at the main house and Sir Riley immediately asks for his room to be organized because Isaac will be staying with him. Unfortunately, the servants at the main entrance politely inform him that they've received orders to guide the young Master Isaac to the annex. Of course, the white-haired knight is curious as to why that's the case, so another servant reveals that the fifth son said to never bring Isaac into the main building. While our boy is just confused about everything going on, Riley is just pissed that the fifth master wants to send Isaac to a cursed place where someone met their end. Hearing all of this, our boy just concludes that the Joshua family is falling apart. Riley is disappointed at his big brother for doing something really pointless, and Isaac agrees because he knows that he could literally be living in a mansion. He doesn't want to stay in the annex, but then Whisper informs him that the mana cores are there. Our boy starts to have a change of heart, but before he can do anything to influence the knight, Riley forces his way through, insisting that he can't let his nephew stay in that ghost-ridden place. Isaac tries to protest, but it all comes out as babbling. The seventh son heads up to his room so that he can read Isaac the holy scriptures of how the great saintess fought against the Skeleton King, which is also going to be his bedtime story every night. After that, he intends to tell the boy all the exorcism methods that have been specifically made for the Skeleton King. Of course, that's practically going to be like an exorcism for him. Thankfully, Riley is stopped in his tracks when the fifth son gets in the way. He wonders why his white-haired brother is making a fuss over picking up some homeless child. Apparently, Riley hasn't been home in a long time, and now that he's showing his face after so long, he's already going against his big brother. This brother in question is Gowl Joshua, the fifth son of the family. The guy stands in the way, making it clear that he's challenging the knight, and Isaac realizes that this guy is practically a thug. Gowl orders Riley to put down the baby and send him to the annex, but the seventh son refuses, claiming that they can't send a descendant of Joshua to a place where they literally exiled people in the past. At this point, Isaac figures that Gowl must be from the faction that doesn't want him here. Riley then asks his big brother to move aside so he can go read Isaac the terrible bedtime story. Of course, our boy doesn't want this to happen, and all he wants is to be put down so he can go to the annex. Seeing the baby up close, Gowl becomes pretty curious as to where Riley even found the child. He stares at Isaac with a twisted look on his face, claiming that the boy is not a descendant of their family. Our boy starts to get quite uncomfortable and wonders if the guy is a member of the clergy or if he is just a delinquent. Whatever the case, all he wants is to go to the annex so he can suck on monocores. At this point, Riley confronts his big brother, stating that he only wants to send Isaac away because he wants the boy out of contention. As soon as our boy hears this, he suddenly changes his mind. Before, he planned to suck the household dry, become the saint, then become the pope and take revenge on the gods, but he's starting to have a different idea now. Gowl just responds to this accusation, claiming that the baby is probably cursed already because he heard that a demon even came to get him. The other knights quickly dismiss this, informing the fifth son that Isaac was actually the one who played a part in banishing the demon. As far as they're concerned, the fact that a demon went after him in the first place proves that the boy is important, which is why they believe that he has the holy powers of a saint. Gowl finds them all amusing because he doesn't believe a word of anything they just said. He's quite surprised that they put so much effort into covering this trash story, so he tells them to show him the boy's powers if they want to keep calling him the next saint. Hearing this, Whisper gets all excited, so he encourages the young master to show his powers by summoning a meteorite, but our boy doesn't want to do that. Gowl makes it clear that he won't believe anything until he sees it with his eyes, so he suggests that Isaac revive the part of their household symbol that their lord likes a lot if he's really the saint as they say he is. The fifth son points to the old tree, claiming that it died because of the demon's dark mana, so he feels that Isaac should be able to revive the tree with ease if he's really the saint. As you can imagine, Riley considers this a very ridiculous test, and Isaac concludes that Melissa's children are a piece of work. Just then, our boy and his black cloud buddy sense something that catches their attention, so he tosses Whisper over there to go handle it. Riley reminds his brother that the tree has been dead for over 70 years, so he doesn't get what the guy would even expect a child that can't even speak yet to do about it. The argument is cut short when they suddenly turn to see that the holy tree that was just dead suddenly came back to life. Gowl can't believe his eyes because this is the same tree that just kept dying even after they used healing and purification magic. While he's still in shock, our boy just smirks confidently because it was truly nothing for him. It turns out that he sent Whisper to go and suck up all the mana that was keeping the tree dead. The other knights are equally baffled by the situation, so they ask Sir Riley what he did to the tree, and he admits that he didn't do anything, so they conclude that Lord Isaac is the one responsible. Surprisingly, Gowl still refuses to believe that the kid is the saint. He reminds them that nobody in this house has been able to do anything about the tree, so he doesn't think the baby could have done anything. With this in mind, he concludes that someone else must have helped him, but nobody even cares what he thinks anymore. While he's busy being a hater, the other knights start praising the kid again. Gowl gets annoyed and accuses Riley of being responsible. He feels that the guy got the help of the saintess and made it look like the baby did it. Gowl starts to lose his shit and Riley keeps denying it, but the fifth son is convinced that they're using tricks on him. Riley points out how it's practically impossible for him to have met the saintess, and his tension keeps rising. Our boy starts to think that Melissa should focus more on her household instead of vanquishing demons. Taking a closer look at the fifth son, Isaac notices that he doesn't really look like Melissa. If anything, he's Riley's half-brother because he looks a lot like that bastard Pope. Gowl finally loses it, furious that Riley brought the boy here as the next saint candidate when he knows that they already have a candidate in the house. Our boy had no idea that there were other candidates in the family and figures that Gowl must already have a favorite. Whisper finds this all really exciting, so he encourages Isaac to compete with the other candidate. But our boy is more worried that the other candidate might be very wicked if Gowl is the one backing him up. Riley responds to his brother's rant, suggesting that Gowl leave Isaac alone since he's the son of their eldest brother and also has the right to lead this house. The fifth son almost feels insulted by this because he has no intention of letting the son of his cowardly first brother who ran away lead them. At this point, our boy starts to realize why he's being treated like an outcast when he hasn't even done anything wrong. Gowl didn't know that the baby was the son of the saintess until now, but he still isn't convinced that the child belongs to their brother. As far as he's concerned, the baby looks more like the saintess, and so he suggests selling Isaac off to continue their bloodline. Riley finally has enough of Gowl's nonsense, so he punches the guy right in the face. While things are getting even more heated, Isaac seems to be enjoying the whole thing, especially since he's getting a lot of useful information. Riley pounces on his big brother, prepared to beat the shit out of him for spouting that nonsense, but the guards quickly step in to separate them. Seeing how chaotic the family is, our boy concludes that it's going to be really easy for him to take over. He's so excited about it, but Whisper just reminds him that he'll probably go down with the family since he's now one of them. His black cloud buddy suggests that he didn't think that far because his brain shrank to the size of a baby's and all he can do is tell Whisper to shut up. The scene shifts and we see that Isaac has finally been introduced to the rest of the house, but they just seem disappointed that they've added yet another boy to the family. At this point, our boy concludes that nobody in this house is sane, but he hasn't even heard the worst yet. They call the Saintess a bitch for burdening them with another useless son, and while he's still in shock from this, the acting matriarch tells everyone to be quiet. She starts by telling Riley that they've all decided that the boy will be raised in the minor house. This woman is Henna Joshua, the Lord's second wife, and she is curious as to why Riley brought the child into their land. Isaac notices that she's openly hostile and figures that she's the one who wants him in the annex. Gowl angrily chimes in, urging Riley to answer, and so Isaac realizes that Henna is the rude boy's mother. Riley finally speaks up and starts by asking where his father is. Henna claims that he's out of town, and Riley admits that it's a shame, stating that the Lord should hear the news that his oldest grandson Isaac revived the holy tree. Everyone is shocked to hear this, but Gowl quickly stands up to dismiss the claim, stating that was just a coincidence. As far as he's concerned, the prayers of the Joshua household must have finally taken effect. Others agree with this, refusing to believe that a child could have done it when their own patriarch couldn't. Henna chimes in as well, stating that there isn't even any evidence to prove that Isaac revived the tree. Seeing how they all discredit him at the table, our boy is pissed, so he decides to give them the proof they're looking for. Without a second thought, he unleashes a huge display of power, and when they see the energy whirling all around the baby, they realize that it's the energy of the holy tree. At the meeting, Riley suggests that Isaac got rid of the mana that was eating away at the holy tree, and all the elders there are shocked at this. They refuse to believe that such a thing is even possible and insist that there's no way a newborn of all people would be able to remove the mana that was on the holy tree. But then again, some of the people there seem to believe that the only feasible explanation is that the child created a physical form out of the mana. In response, some others also agree that this method of exorcism might work, but at the same time, they know that it's not exactly a simple technique, because if something had gone wrong in the process, then it might have killed the tree. Besides, there is a reason the patriarch opted for the stable purification method instead. While they're all trying to come up with an explanation, Gowl finally has enough of it and loses his shit. The fifth son snaps at everyone at the table, wondering what the hell they're blabbering about, because as far as he's concerned, there's absolutely no way that a newborn could do such a thing. In response, Sir Riley quickly counters him, insisting that Isaac must have instinctively exorcised the mana. Hearing this, our boy is glad to see that someone around is finally saying something right. Riley goes on to defend the young master some more, informing everyone that this baby that still feeds on breast milk has done what no one in the Central Papacy could in the past 70 years. At this point, Gowl can no longer contain his anger, so he slams his fist on the table and asks the elders if they seriously believe this nonsense. He is so annoyed that anyone would even suggest that an infant who can't even talk yet could possibly be capable of exorcism. Gowl claims that the Joshua house will immediately become a laughingstock once the world hears about this. He's even more furious because he feels that the baby might not even be a descendant of the Joshua household. As far as he's concerned, Isaac might actually be from some unknown family elsewhere. After Gowl is done ranting and spewing a whole lot of garbage, Riley chimes in again to address the elders. He informs them that this child will become the saint and suggests that he could even be the next pope for all they know. While he's saying all of this, the baby in question just smirks the whole time, feeling pretty confident about it. Unfortunately, the smirk on his face is quickly wiped off when Sir Riley assures everyone that the child before them will also slay the Skeleton King. As you can imagine, this was never part of the contract that our boy signed up for, so he is extremely shocked that the seventh son would put him on the spot like that. While our boy is still trying to cope with the feeling of shock, the elders in the room start cursing the Skeleton King, and that's when we see Henna thinking about how Riley just started digging his own grave. With this in mind, she finally rejoins the conversation, stating that they should test the baby since Riley is so confident about him. Before the knight can even say anything, the acting matriarch requests the use of the divine relic storage, and judging by the ominous aura she exudes, it's pretty clear that the test is an arduous one. The scene shifts and we're taken to the dark forest in the northwestern regions of the Holy Helen Empire. Here, we see a huge demonic creature getting decapitated in a split second, and we get to see the man responsible for their right after. He confirms that this place was also a mess, and while he's still looking around, a knight comes around to greet him, revealing that he's actually the patriarch. He asks the knight what the matter is and learns that his proxy has requested to use the divine relic storage. In response, the patriarch reminds the knight that the sancticides are not allowed to use it, and that's when finds out that it wasn't the sancticides. The knight goes on to inform him that his grandson revived the holy tree. and that the proxy wishes to see if he has the qualities of a saint. Hearing this, the patriarch's interest is piqued, so he turns around to ask the knight what exactly he's talking about. He demands to know why there would be a saint in his household because he definitely didn't permit it. He claims that only a saintess can survive going into that place, and as the patriarch of the household, Eli Joshua orders the knight to tell them to avoid unnecessary conflicts. As far as he's concerned, there are no exceptions, but while he's still saying this, someone cuts him off all of a sudden, ordering the knight to let them go ahead. This white-haired lady joins the discussion, seeming very impressed that Isaac managed to revive the holy tree. It turns out this lady in uniform is actually Melissa Joshua, the real matriarch and former saintess. Out of the blue, she suggests that they put all or the saying and saintess candidates in the storage since they're opening it after all. The knight is horrified by this idea and asks to confirm if he just heard right. As much as Melissa would like this idea, the knight is afraid that a child of another household might take something good from the storage, while Eli is just dumbfounded by everything he just heard. Surprisingly, the matriarch is actually hoping that something is taken out of the storage because even the best saintesses of the former generations could not take anything out of there. So, she feels that anyone who actually manages to take out that item will also be able to track down the Skeleton King and finally kill him. That being said, she suggests that they better put a reward on the task to motivate all the contestants. As such, she orders the knight to tell those back home that the child that brings out the best treasure within the storage will be given a reward even the Pope cannot procure. Melissa reveals that the winner will receive the generational heirloom of the Joshua household, and also promises to personally teach them the secret technique of the household. The former saintess is really excited about the competition, so much so that she's ready to give the winner everything she possibly can. We've been hearing them talk about the divine relic storage for a while now, but what exactly does it mean? Well, it's actually where a secret technique from thousands of years ago is kept along with several divine relics. A saintess has always guarded the storage, and the Joshuas are said to be the owners of the storage. Due to the fact that only children under the age of 10 can enter, the storage was used as a kind of ritual for the saintess candidates. When they turned one, they went in and chose something, and people predicted what kind of powers the saintess would have based on the item the child brought back. However, the storage is so dangerous that even saintess candidates risk their lives by going there. And after several deaths, the storage was sealed for good. Until now. Back in the Joshua Duchy, we catch up with our boy who's currently having a chat with his whisper. The Black Cloud is confident that his little master will make it out of the storage with the treasure. In response, Isaac just snaps at Whisper for narrating everything about the divine relic storage to him. To which the Black Cloud responds by asking him if he's looking forward to the competition. Isaac admits that he definitely is, especially since the body of the Skeleton King is said to be in there. The conversation is cut short when the leader of the Knights picks him up asking if he's excited about the test, revealing that the matriarch has opened up the storage for all candidates. Isaac is surprised to hear that there are actually other candidates, and the knight goes on to reveal that the children of 5 renowned houses will be here. Even though the damned household will be here too, the knight is still sure that Isaac will win anyway. Hearing this, Whisper realizes that the Joshua family is making a bigger deal out of this than he imagined, but our boy is happy about this new development because he feels that it will be much easier for him to take his body back. Just then, Realize snatches the baby away from the knight and tells Isaac that he has to be careful. He's taken aback by this and wonders if it's dangerous because the demons are guarding that place. Even though it's something that calls for concern, our boy is still pretty confident that they're all 6th rank and lower if they were caught by the Joshua household. With this in mind, he figures that he'll just use his overpowering skill to defeat them. Unfortunately, just as the knight drops him back in his cradle, he reveals that the demons there are 8th rank. He knows that they're no easy opponent to deal with, and as soon as our boy hears this, he's absolutely horrified because he has no idea what such powerful demons are doing there. As if he wasn't already worried enough, the other knights chime in, revealing that the worst problem there is the 9th rank dragon. Reali agrees with this, but that's only if they're considering ranks. Even Whisper is shocked by how dangerous the test is and concludes that everyone in the Joshua household must be out of their minds. After all, it's absolutely insane for them to have put a dragon in the same place where they send a bunch of 1-year-old babies. It's clearly a deadly mission, but the talking cloud is a little relieved because his master knows a lot about dragons. Unfortunately, our boy isn't exactly calm about the situation. Isaac starts to panic, knowing that dragons are dangerous in a different sense. Apparently, our boy has scammed the fire-breathing lizards a bunch of times, and so they probably have it out for him now. This basically means that about 70 massive dragons are now desperately seeking revenge on him. Whisper is very overwhelmed by the situation, and Isaac is even more worried because he knows that dragons have very good memories and is afraid that they might even recognize his soul. At this point, the talking cloud starts to feel that this is probably a good time for him to switch masters, but this treacherous joke just makes our boy even more unsettled. Right now, Isaac is in a lot of danger, so he feels that he has only one option. There are 8th rank demons and a 9th rank dragon in the divine relic storage. He can barely deal with 6th rank demons as he is right now, so in order to fight them off, he feels that he needs to rob the Joshua household of all their manhwa. Whisper is impressed with this idea, and just like that, they both decide that it's time to head straight to the annex. The scene shifts and we catch up with our boy casually hanging out in the large mansion with his talking cloud right behind him. He crawls all the way to a huge door, and after following him for a while, Whisper finally asks him if he's alright. At the moment, Isaac is engrossed in a book and he hasn't looked away for a while now, so his floating buddy is a bit concerned because he looks like he's about to be exorcised. It turns out that he's been reading the Book of Holy Spells, which talks about 10 ways to shred the Skeleton King. The title alone is enough to understand why he looks so horrified. Besides that, he also wishes that he knew how to manipulate holy powers so that he can easily learn all of the holy spells in the book. Our boy hasn't even been weaned yet, so he figures that he'll just need to mind control Relay and force him to teach him the spells. The talking cloud quickly interrupts him, reminding him that he would be using dark magic within the center of the clergy if he does that. Whisper wonders if Isaac is trying to drive the Joshua house into the ground, being framed as a demon, and our boy is just taken aback by the fact that his once hateful subject is now even more logical than him. He's so surprised and wonders what happened to Whisper's personality in the last 150 years. While the cloud is laughing sheepishly at the back, our boy turns back to the book and suddenly realizes that he can't understand anything in there with theory alone. He reads for so long but doesn't make any progress, and after a while, he starts falling asleep. Relay comes around and notices that the boy is getting really tired, so he picks him up and suggests that he must have had a really eventful day. Isaac is disappointed that he's already feeling sleepy, but then again, he remembers that children his age need to sleep for 16 hours a day. The white-haired uncle takes him back to his cradle to put him to bed while the other knight goes to put the book away, and he's at it. He's taken aback by the title of the book. Meanwhile, Sir Relay places Isaac on his bed and uses a regeneration spell to make him active again. Our boy is amazed by this because he knows that it's a holy spell. Feeling all excited, he tells his uncle to use an attack spell next. Thankfully, his clever floating buddy is there to call him back to order, reminding him that he needs to go to the annex soon and can't keep people in here. Hearing this, our boy remembers the plan and concludes that he needs to get rid of these people in the room quickly so he can sneak out to the annex. As such, he quickly flops down on his bed and starts pretending to be asleep. However, Whisper assures him that nobody is going to fall for that lame acting. Surprisingly, the act works and the knights in the room are instantly mesmerized by how cute the young master is. They feel that he falls asleep so quickly and are amazed that he seems to do everything so quickly too. The talking cloud can't believe his eyes and concludes that these Joshua descendants are all insane to have seriously fallen for that lame acting. Believing that Isaac is fast asleep, they make their way out of the room to go do other things, leaving the black cloud really baffled by them. Just when our boy thinks everything is going perfectly, he hears the knight saying that they would take the totem away because of how dangerous it is. Isaac's eyes shoot wide open at that moment, and Sir Relay insists that they keep the precious item safe because it's Isaac's first totem. Hearing this, our boy begins to panic because he needs to resurrect that totem. As far as he's concerned, they can't take it, but right now, he can't do anything to stop them, and all he can do is listen with tears running down his face as Relay plans to display the totem where it's most visible. Isaac feels so helpless because they're about to take the totem away and he can't do anything about it, even though he needs to drain mana from it. Since he can't have the totem, he decides that all he can do now is suck dry the mana core that's in the annex. With this in mind, and with the coast clear, he decides that it's time to get moving. Isaac doesn't even think twice before climbing out of his cradle, but his floating buddy just watches him with disappointment laced all over his face. Whisper wonders if this toddler really intends to crawl all the way to the annex, because if that's the case, then he probably won't even make it there today. In response, our boy assures him that he has a plan and orders Whisper to just do his part by opening the door. Of course, the talking cloud has no choice but to obey his master, even though he makes it clear that there's no way he's carrying our boy all the way to the annex. While he's still trying to make his point, he suddenly realizes that Relay locked the door, and they can't get it open because the locking mechanism is outside and there's even a holy spell on it. Isaac gets frustrated pretty quickly, so he asks Whisper to just break the door open, but the floating cloud kicks against this idea because he knows that it would only attract more of the Joshua family members, since they would think that they're under attack or something. The situation is driving our boy crazy, especially since the talking cloud can't even carry him all the way to the annex. Besides that, he also knows that things could get even more complicated if he uses magic, so he just starts crashing out at the door, wondering how on earth he can escape from this room. All of a sudden, a young boy opens the door and enters the room, accidentally shoving our boy down in the process. This blue-eyed kid happens to be Gowl's son and the other saint candidate of House Joshua. His name is Shuri and he's 15 years old. Shuri is taken aback by the fact that Isaac made it to the door even though he's still a baby that can't even walk yet, and the toddler in question is equally baffled that the boy standing before him is supposed to be his rival. Isaac quickly spots the totem in Shuri's hand and immediately concludes that there's no way the brat could have made it because even he couldn't make one like that. Surprisingly, the 15-year-old rival starts using magic all of a sudden and Isaac is pretty amazed by this. It turns out that this little display is Shuri's own way of trying to intimidate the young master, claiming that he's the one who's going to be the saint. The blue-eyed brat is annoyed that Isaac would dare to want what belongs to him, and while he's blabbering about this, our boy comes up with a plan to escape. Without even thinking twice, he uses magic to hit Shuri in the face with one of his toys, and just as the boy starts tearing up, Isaac claims that he's found his ride. While the brat is trying to school him, our boy takes a closer look and realizes that the kid must be Gowl's son. Another reason why he doesn't even feel sorry for him is because he saw him gathering holy mana to attack him just now, and so he had to defend himself. In other words, Isaac feels that Shuri deserves the beating, so he follows up with many more hits with his toy. Our boy literally starts bullying the brat relentlessly, and Whisper just encourages him to continue. While Shuri is trying to cover his head and save himself, Isaac advises the insolent bastard to just accept that he's going to be his and avoid more beating. Just then, Shuri creates a small magic shield to protect himself, and Isaac just mocks him for thinking that he's special or something. Our boy is a little surprised to see this, and Shuri just starts to gloat, telling him that it's too soon for that because he is actually the only person his age that can use third-rank defensive holy magic. Shuri uses a holy attack magic called the Radiant Holiness and unleashes the blast on Isaac. Looking closely at it, our boy admits that it's quite impressive, but he's not in any way intimidated by this display because it's actually to his advantage. Seeing so much power being radiated from the kid, Isaac just thanks him for the meal because now he'll get to learn it all by himself. Our boy gets right to it, and as soon as he demonstrates it, Shuri starts looking like he's about to cry. The brat doesn't even understand how a defensive spell can be so big, but Isaac is just so glad that he got to learn it right now with ease. He also wonders how the brat learned it since Rilai didn't want to teach him. As the huge spell overwhelms Shuri, Isaac and his buddy Whisper casually enjoy the show. That's until the talking cloud has finally chimes in and suggests that it's not a good idea to kill someone from the Joshua household. Isaac is surprised to hear this because he really didn't have any plans to kill the brat. Besides, the attack didn't even land a single hit on Shuri, and all it did was scare him till he shat his pants. Our boy finally ceases the attacks, and the arrogant boy immediately gets up to insult Isaac again. He starts ranting about how he's better than the toddler, but he's suddenly interrupted when an ominous voice cuts him off. The voice asks why he would even dare to attack his master, and by the time Shuri turns around, he turns himself face to face with the terrifying Shadow Lick from earlier. The blue-eyed brat instantly falls to his knees as fear overcomes him, and the Shadow Lick concludes that he truly wishes to die. Our boy sees what's going on and just finds the whole thing amusing. So much so that he gets on the monster's shoulder and enjoys the view as the Shadow Lick scares the shit out of the boy. Seeing that Shuri is now scared out of his mind, he realizes that it's the perfect time to make his request once again. So, he orders the brat to carry him, and as you can imagine, the boy doesn't disobey this time around. The scene shifts and the story continues with Shuri's monologue. He introduces himself as a member of the Joshua family and claims that he will become the saint in the future. He is confident that he will escape the cursed Joshua household and become the next pope. This has been his dream for the longest time, but now he's facing a problem that puts his future in jeopardy. Apparently, the thing putting his future at risk is the damn toddler that he's carrying on his back. Shuri looks like he'd give anything to be anywhere else in the world, while our boy clearly seems to be enjoying the ride. As far as he is concerned, this boy is his human horse, so he points onward to the annex. Shuri is already pretty exhausted, but he can't stop or disobey, so he asks Isaac why exactly he's doing all of this. He tries to intimidate the toddler, but before he can say anything, the Shadow Lick cuts him off once again, ordering him to keep moving before he's torn to shreds. The creature calls Shuri a lowly human bug, and as it hovers above him, the fear in his heart instantly gives him the energy to keep moving, because right now, the most important thing is for him to focus on making it out alive of this situation. With tears running down his face, Shuri literally begs for anyone to come to his rescue. The scene shifts again and we see that they've finally made it to the annex. Once they're there, Isaac keeps directing his human horse, and after a while, the boy becomes too tired. This pisses Isaac off, so he asks the brat if he wants to die or something. In response, Shuri bluntly asks him where exactly he is going in the middle of the night. The blue-eyed boy takes a few more steps forward, and that's when he lifts his head to see that he's standing in front of the Joshua residence' second annex. Fear grips him when he realizes where they are because he has heard so many rumors about this haunted house. He's so confused and wonders why the crazy toddler dragged him here when several people have died here. It's such a notorious spot that the patriarch forbids anyone going in there. Just looking at the place, Isaac and Whisper sense some familiar energy that puts mischievous smiles on both their faces. The floating cloud suggests that there are probably several dozen here and claims that Isaac would even have to train himself to death for decades to acquire the amount of mana in this place. They can literally see the mana glowing from inside the haunted house, and so our boy can't wait to go in there and absorb all the energy. With this in mind, he orders the brat to get moving, but this time, Shuri resists. He can't believe that Isaac wants him to go inside the annex and refuses because he knows how dangerous it would be for him. He tries to make Isaac understand by informing that the adults said the place was prohibited, but once again, he's interrupted by the dominant voice of the Shadow Lick that tells him to shut the hell up and get moving. The red-eyed creature appears to him once again, and even though he's afraid of what's inside the house, he's more afraid of the giant smoke demon that's currently beside him. So, he musters all the courage he possibly can and walks into the annex with Isaac on his back. They enter the dark building, and once they're in there, our boy begins to inspect the place. He feels that the inside is in a much worse state than he imagined, and as he continues to look around, he notices something strange in the distance. He wonders what's going on there, so Whisper informs him that the wolf building is sealed. He reveals that every door here has something like a protective barrier on it as well, and as you can imagine, this is pretty disappointing for the toddler. He feels that it's such a shame, and while he's sulking on Shuri's back, the poor teenager begs for them to head back. He's terrified and feels that it's better they just leave since everything here seems to have a lock on it anyway. This suggestion pisses our boy off a lot, so he takes his anger out on Shuri by pulling his hair like a maniac. The kid winces in pain, wondering why the crazy baby just did that. Isaac doesn't let go, so he starts freaking out and screaming for the baby to let go of his hair. In the process, they find themselves in front of 3 big picture frames. This catches their attention, so they stop fighting for a second. The boy takes a closer look and realizes that these dusty frames are actually pictures of the past patriarchs. He's baffled for a second, but then concludes that the notorious baby on his back might have plans to go after the patriarch position too. Shuri quickly dismisses the idea, claiming that the ambition is pointless because as far as he's concerned, he's going to be the next patriarch of the Joshua house. While he's still bragging, our boy just quietly charges up his toy with enough magical energy until it's glowing. Once the rattle is powerful enough, he unleashes a powerful blast on the picture frames, shatters the glass, and destroys all of the portraits. Shuri is absolutely horrified by what he just witnessed because he can't believe that the toddler just vandalized the pictures of the ancestors. He wonders if Isaac is crazy because he really doesn't get what the boy is doing to the patriarchs or why he's doing this. To everyone else, our boy might probably look like a hateful baby who just wants to destroy stuff, but the truth is that he actually sensed something in the portraits. Apparently, someone placed barriers on them, and now that he's unleashed an insane attack on that part of the wall, Whisper confirms that the barrier has been broken. He's glad to hear this, so he and his floating buddy share a laugh of victory. Now that he's broken the barrier, he figures that he no longer needs Shuri to carry him everywhere, so he hops down from the boy's back and starts crawling toward the broken barrier. The blue-eyed boy is so flabbergasted when he sees this because he has absolutely no idea where the toddler is going or why he just jumped down all of a sudden. Our boy is so excited to see what's going on the other side, so he can't wait to get there. In order to generate more speed, he just rolls sideways in the ground instead of crawling as usual. The floating cloud follows him closely while Shuri just keeps calling out to him. He doesn't get where the baby is going all of a sudden after creating a huge mess in the hall. As you can imagine, Isaac doesn't even give a shit what Shuri thinks, so he completely ignores the annoying cousin and makes his way to the room where he'll finally find the mama. He gets in there and is left in a state of awe as soon as he enters. Everything in the room is so awesome to him, and so he can't wait to dive right in. Shuri follows him and sees him entering one of the rooms there. Since he doesn't know what kind of catastrophe the baby might be capable of, he hurries to the place, hoping to catch up, but Isaac casually orders Whisper to lock the door behind him. Shuri sees this and tries to increase his pace while telling the toddler to stop. Of course, he's just ignored once again, and the door is shut in front of him because Isaac feels that a kid like him doesn't need to know what they're up to. Once the door is locked, our boy quietly sits down in the room and first heaves a sigh of relief because he wasn't caught. Now, he has the room to himself and enough time to do whatever he wants, so he decides that it's time to begin. Unfortunately, just when he's about to start the process, he suddenly realizes that he doesn't actually have as much time as he thinks because Shuri keeps banging on the door and threatening to tell the adults everything. Of course, that's not something that our boy needs right now. The boy threatens to tell them everything and get Isaac kicked out of the Joshua family. While Shuri is still ranting at the door, he suddenly hears a familiar voice come out to him. He turns around to see Sir Rilai and the knights who came to check what was going on. They probably heard noises, so they came around, but they're baffled to see Shuri of all people in the annex and wonder what he is doing in there. Seeing the adults, the brat happily begins to tell them everything. He starts by claiming that Isaac is a monster, but before he can get to the main point, he's cut off by one of the elders at the back who snaps at him. The old lady asks him what the hell he thinks he's doing here, reminding him that it's forbidden to enter the annex no matter what. She's even more pissed because she thinks that he was the one that put Isaac's life in danger by bringing the baby into such a deadly place. The boy realizes that there's no way he can win this case now, and so he just stands there nervously as she keeps scolding him. The old woman reveals that many people saw him bring Isaac to the annex on his back, and on top of that, there were traces of holy attack magic in Isaac's room. At the moment, Shuri looks so guilty of everything, and it's looking like there's no way he can even pin it on the baby because all the evidence is currently against him. After pointing out all of this, the adults ask him to own up, feeling that he must be responsible for all this. However, Shuri isn't ready to take the fall for a toddler that he hates. He tries to exonerate himself by explaining what happens, but it all just sounds like one flimsy excuse after the other. He admits that he carried Isaac to the annex and that some of the holy attack magic was his, so it's not exactly likely that he'll be let off the hook after this. Riley is pretty concerned about his teenage nephew, so he approaches the kid in a less aggressive manner. He informs Shuri that he's gone too far this time and makes it clear to him that he's actually been harassing a toddler that hasn't even been weaned yet. As much as the boy would love to deny this, a part of him knows that it's true. At this point, the white-haired knight asks Shuri to tell them where he locked Isaac, and this pushes the blue-eyed boy to break down. He starts crying as he tells them that he didn't lock Isaac anywhere. He tells them that Isaac went in on his own, but of course, this is sound very believable since he was the one that carried the child all the way to the annex on his back. Riley is pretty confused, but he remains calm and starts to check by himself. He knocks on the door and calls out to Isaac, wondering how the baby could possibly have locked the door by himself. Riley finally opens the door and is heartbroken when he sees the baby crying his eyes out in there. All the adults are so concerned when they finally see the baby. They feel so sorry for the toddler, claiming that he must have been so terrified while locked in that dark room all by himself. They're glad that he's alright, while Shuri just wonders what the hell is going on. Everybody else has fallen for Isaac's big act and now they all think he is a monster. Riley carries the child in his arms and attempts to calm him down. As much as he's pissed, he is just glad that the baby seems unharmed. He's very angry with Shuri, so he turns to the boy with a death glare and tells him that he should be ashamed of himself. Shuri is also crying at this point because now everyone is mad at him. He keeps trying to explain what really happened, but nobody wants to hear it. They've all made up their minds already, feeling that he wanted to hurt his little cousin. As Riley makes his way out of the annex, our boy looks back at Shuri with a mischievous smile on his face, thanking the boy for the ride because he would have been able to enjoy this nice meal of mana if it wasn't for him. Unfortunately, Shuri is the only one who sees the smug look on Isaac's face, so he just starts losing his shit. The old lady from earlier calls out to him, probably because it's time for him to go back home and receive his punishment. Meanwhile, Isaac notices that the poor boy's blood pressure just shot up all of a sudden and figures that it might be because it's so cold in here. Moving on from Shuri's bad luck, our boy recalls how there was more mana in there than he even expected. As a result, he's obtained at least as much mana as he would have gotten with 100 years of training with one go. He's glad about this progress and feels that with this much mana, he'll finally be able to use that plan he came up with before. While our boy is busy plotting, the soft-hearted knight just keeps thinking about how terrified he must have been inside that dark room all alone. The scene changes and the story continues some time later. That morning, Sir Riley comes in with someone that he wants to introduce our boy to. Isaac was reading a book with his floating pal and doesn't really look like he appreciates being disturbed, but he listens to what his uncle has to say anyway. The white-haired knight reveals that the lady in uniform standing next to him is a silly, who will be working as the young master's assistant from now on. After that incident with Shuri, Riley probably feels that it's best for the kid to have his personal security and assistant to avoid something like that happening again. The green-eyed lady introduces herself a second time, revealing that her full name is Asili Larch, a holy knight of the Joshua household. She suddenly kneels before the child and vows to serve him until the day she dies. Seeing all of the theatrics, Isaac immediately assumes that they're doing all of this and assigning someone to him because of what happened the last time. He doesn't like the idea very much, and so he starts throwing a tantrum. Even though the lady probably can't understand all of his baby mumbles, he tells her that she's excused and that she should get out of his sight. But then again, the looks of horror on the knights' faces suggest that they might actually understand what he just said. Asili feels that Isaac is way too cute, and even though he's currently in a very bad mood, she politely begs him to let her pinch his cheeks even just once. The lady is literally twitching like she's struggling to hold herself back, and so our boy is just overwhelmed by the number of lunatics there are in this household. While he's trying to deal with the obsessed woman in front of him, Riley proceeds to do something quite weird as well. The guy reaches into his coat pocket and reveals a ring in a case, claiming that it's a present. Isaac is quite disappointed when he sees the plain ring and wonders if his uncle found it in the dumpster or something. At this point, even Whisper is disappointed and he starts to think that the rumors are true. Initially, he thought he had heard wrong, but now, it's starting to look like the Joshua household might truly be in a financial crisis because he doesn't get how the knight can call this a worthy present for the young master's first birthday. Our boy keeps staring at the ring with disgust, and then all of a sudden, Asili takes a closer look and realizes that it is actually the Saintess heirloom. All of a sudden, the ring doesn't look so cheap and worthless anymore. Isaac is taken aback when he hears this, and his uncle casually reveals that he acquired it from the council just for him, so our boy does a little inspection to confirm if it's real. Sure enough, it turns out to be the real thing, and this leaves our boy in a state of awe. He recognizes the object because it is the same ring that the Saintesses used when they battled against him. It's the Elder Ring, a small ring which contains a small miracle of God. It suddenly starts glowing with fiery energy, and our boy admits that the holy power stored within it is incredible. As impressive as the gift is, he feels that it seems he could use it only once or twice before it breaks, but thankfully, He has a way to fix it. While he's celebrating this new present he just got, he looks to the distance and sees Gowl shooting death glares at him. The fifth son has been taking LS since Isaac came around, and now that the toddler has been given the Saintess heirloom instead of his son Shuri, he's absolutely furious. Our boy sees the expression on Gowl's face, and so he confirms that this must be the real thing. The guy is literally glaring at his baby nephew as if he wants to kill him. After brooding by the tree for a while, the guy finally comes around, faking concern and affection. The guy is doing his best to look like a loving uncle, but the spite inside him is just so much that he can't help but come off as creepy. Isaac is just irritated by this act because it's all just so gross to him. On the other hand, Whisper concludes that the guy might finally have run mad after hating for so long. It turns out that Gowl only came around because he's currently on a mission. Things are getting complicated for him right now because he broke the blessing device in the relic storage to ensure that Isaac doesn't get the blessing, but he didn't expect them to give the baby the Saintess heirloom just like that. In a flashback, we see one of the elders deciding that Isaac should get the ring since he can't receive his blessing. Of course, Gowl tries to protest this, suggesting that they give the ring to his child instead, but the old lady just reminds him that Shuri already received a blessing from the Sancticides and then tells him not to be greedy. Gowl is so furious just thinking about how it all happened because he had actually planned to steal the heirloom while pretending to donate it to the Sancticides. He feels that Isaac doesn't deserve the ring because there's no way he can even fathom the true value. With this in mind, he tries to trick the others, suggesting that Riley should have gotten a good present for the boy instead of this useless ring. The knight is surprised to hear his brother speak of the Saintess heirloom in such a manner, but Gowl just keeps up the act, claiming that he could never give such a useless present to his precious nephew. After stating this, he reveals a more fancy ring with a diamond on it, claiming that it's imbued with many blessings directly from the Sancticides. He tries to make it look like the gold ring is more precious than the Saintess heirloom, and even Riley seems to be a little intimidated by this. Isaac seems to be attracted to the gold ring, and so he tries to take the heirloom from Isaac, but the clever baby swiftly slaps him in the face and tells him to get lost. Our boy feels that the gold ring reeks of the foul stench of the Pope, so he throws it in the water, telling him to get lost with the ring. Gowl is horrified when Isaac does this, so he desperately orders his men to go find the ring immediately. On the other hand, Riley is just confused by the whole thing because the ring that Gowl presented to him seemed 1,000 times more precious than the Saintess heirloom. So, the fact that he still chose his own touches him, and so, he happily lifts him up into the air and promises to give him only the best from now on. While Isaac and his knights are celebrating, Gowl and his men keep searching for it desperately. Unfortunately for them, they might never find it because our boy cast a weight magic spell on the ring. Whisper is just proud of his master because his determination to never lay a ginger on such a foul object is truly admirable. In his mind, the Skeleton King should never have anything to do with something associated with the Pope, but to his surprise, Isaac tells him that he'll have to retrieve the ring at dawn, leaving the talking cloud shocked. Apparently, our boy intends to sell that gold ring because he knows that it's going to be worth a fortune. Later that day, Gowl returns to his chambers in frustration. He is so angry that the ring got lost because he knows how expensive it is. But then again, he consoles himself a bit because he feels that the baby won't even know how to use the Elder Ring. Gowl claims that it's a fitting item for someone who can't even use holy spells. As such, he would need to absorb at least 20 people worth of holy power to use it, which he feels will be impossible. The fifth son starts to feel pretty confident again all of a sudden, wondering if there will even be up to 10 people coming to his first birthday. Gowl is convinced that the controversy around Isaac's birthday will make people try to stay away from the child, but the very next day, the duchy is packed with people. There are over 148 saint candidates, and including the nobles and servants, there are about 4,000 people in attendance. Alice feels that all the ducal families and marquis families from different countries have sent their candidates. While the others are excited about this, Isaac isn't really happy about it. He wonders why there are so many candidates and figures that the gods might have gotten lazy and just sprinkled candidates everywhere. Of course, Whisper agrees with this theory since he's not also a fan of the gods. Riley is surprised that this many people showed up because he thought that many of them would decline the invitation, thinking it was a trap. Just then, someone barges into the room, assuring the knight that nobody thought it was a trap. This guy is Count Simon Age, the head of one of the 3 merchant unions in the Empire, and he also happens to be Riley's best friend. The knight is shocked to see his old friend here, but Simon explains that he couldn't pass up the opportunity to attend after hearing so many rumors. He explains that everyone figured out it wouldn't be a trap and decided to attend, especially since the weakling boy of the Joshua house will be there too. After hearing what the Joshua family had put on the line, Simon claims that he just had to attend. It's such a big deal that even the Pope's family will be in attendance. Hearing this, our boy becomes quite curious because he has no idea what the family had put on the line. Meanwhile, Riley refuses to believe that the Pope's family will come, to which Simon casually agrees with him, stating that they probably won't come since they detest this region so much for having so many commoners. Riley tells Simon to lower his voice, but he refuses, revealing that his son, Armin, is also a candidate, and since the event is hosted by the Joshua family, then the Pope's family has no reason to get involved. In response, Rilai warns him to be mindful of his word, but he doesn't seem to care. That's when a stern voice cuts in, reminding him that nothing is as dangerous as a vulgar friend. The owner of the voice enters the room, stating that the wisdom of the ancient never errs, and this leaves Simon absolutely terrified. The unexpected guest is none other than Bishop Barrett, and the moment he enters, he claims that he really hopes the infant of the weak Joshua household can bring something out from the relic storage to save their family. Barrett admits that he was curious to see the child in question but is disappointed that he still hasn't set eyes on the baby. Hearing this, Alice hides Isaac even more, and the ominous Bishop Barrett prays that their saint candidate can help raise their family even though everyone knows he doesn't mean this. All of a sudden, Rilai begins to panic because he is afraid that this whole arrangement was a trick by the Sancticides. The number of candidates rose from 25 to 148 in a single week, and this means that the Sancticides is turning a blind eye to it. With everyone now trying to make their child the saint, they would become too many, which means that the weakest will be pushed out, and Rilai is afraid that Isaac might get hurt in the chaos. And if that happens during the competition, then our boy might actually be in serious danger. The story continues with a scene talking about the boys born in Joshua. Apparently, other than their exceptional looks and their family's reputation, these boys are said to be useless according to the rumors. But then again, to those who want to possess the superior Joshua DNA, and to those who want to gain the favor of the papal house that hates the house of the saintess, a boy from Joshua is tantalizing prey. In a flashback, we see someone plotting evil against the Joshua boy. He tells the messenger that the boy doesn't have to be dead. Instead, all that's needed is for the boy to be unable to do anything. He orders the person to mix drugs into the baby's water and use a holy poison to finish him off. This mastermind is certain that this will show the child of Joshua the cold reality of this world. He wants to make our boy Isaac a laughingstock in front of everyone, and he wants to make it clear that the Joshua child can never be a saint. Unfortunately, this doesn't exactly go according to plan, because rather than getting poisoned or completely incapacitated, our boy seems to love the concoction so much that he chugs down multiple bottles as soon as they give them to him. As you can imagine, all the others around are absolutely horrified to see that the baby could drink that many bottles of poison without being affected at all. Isaac hits one of the boys with an empty bottle, yelling at them to get more of the poison for him. He feels insulted that they would even think they could kill him with that little poison. The baby is hungry for more, so he throws a tantrum and keeps demanding that they go get him some more poison. At this point, the other kids in there are absolutely terrified. Most of them are already tired of the competition and they just want to go home because they don't even know what the vicious baby is capable of. It's baffling to them how Isaac is still alright because they thought he would be sick with diarrhea after drinking that many bottles already. Since the kid looks completely fine, they begin to think that they might have actually used the wrong bottles. One of the other kids starts to feel sick all of a sudden, and since it's clear that their plan didn't work, he suggests that they just head back. While that's happening, Isaac's older cousin enters the scene and starts scolding the baby. He doesn't like the fact that the boy would be consuming drugged drinks because it could sully the Joshua name, especially since Isaac is supposed to be the saint. He quickly snatches the bottle from Isaac, asking if he's possessed, but our boy just looks at him with disgust laced all over his face. The older boy tries to give him another bottle that doesn't have any poison in it, but Isaac just throws it back at his face, knocking him down to the floor. After taking out the boy, Isaac keeps begging for the bottles with poison in them, and that's when another kid reveals that his drink has holy poison in it. Hearing this, one of the girls there is absolutely horrified because she's afraid that Isaac could even die if he consumes that. They feel that it's way too dangerous for the baby, but as soon as our boy realizes that it's holy poison, he literally leaps into the air to take the bottle for himself. A chaotic struggle ensues as our boy desperately tries to get the holy poison, and while that's happening, the other kids in the room conclude that the baby must have a strong immunity to poison. One of them reveals that she heard that one can reach a state where they naturally filter out poisons if they train that holy power enough. As such, they conclude that Isaac must have reached this level already, but then again, they can't understand why he's desperately looking for poison bottles. To them, the baby might be testing the poison because he thinks it's dangerous to the others, but while they're trying to come up with a theory, Isaac's cousin just looks at them feeling that they have no idea what they're talking about. Just then, an unexpected candidate enters the scene, leaving almost everyone else quite shocked. The white-haired boy in a robe comes around and asks if Isaac is sacrificing himself. Shuri is shocked by his presence because he had no idea that Kina Barrett would be participating. After all, the Papal House doesn't usually compete in such contests. Kina Barrett is the direct grandson of the Papal House, and so it's no surprise when all the other kids there are absolutely overwhelmed by his presence. They're so confused because they have no idea why someone from the Papal House would come into the Saintess's treasury. Even though they're pretty confused by everything going on, they're certain about one thing, which is the fact that Kina is definitely going to win the contest. While they're coming to that conclusion, we catch up with our boy who's currently enjoying the bottle of holy poison that he finally acquired after knocking out the kid that was holding it earlier. Judging by the look on Isaac's face, you can tell that he's completely unfazed by Kina's presence. He's not intimidated by anyone from House Berit, and so he doesn't really care that this is the child that was chosen internally to be the saint. Kina's appearance is quite suspicious to our boy because he knows that the Berit family can't even produce a pure hair color like that. As such, he presumes that they must have dyed Kina's hair to make him have pure white hair like all the past saints. Our boy has lived for a really long time, and since he was once the Skeleton King, he has an idea what all the past popes look like. No matter how far back he thinks, all the popes he remembers had dirty brown hair and nothing like the shiny silver hair on Kina's head. Speaking of Kina, the arrogant young boy smiles smugly in response to all the murmurs and questioning looks all around him. He claims that it's not odd that the papal house is in the Saintess treasury even though nobody else thinks that's true. Kina goes on to remind everyone that the Pope is the head of all clergymen and insists that the Saintess's treasury is the property of the papal house since that's the case. As you can imagine, such a bold statement leaves all the others pretty shocked, especially Shuri, who is most likely going to take it really personally. Anyway, Kina doesn't give a shit what anyone else thinks, so after explaining to the other children, he reveals that he has come to the treasury to take the things that rightfully belong to him. The brat makes this clear to the others and assures them that there is nothing odd about that. Hearing how arrogant Kina is, Isaac easily confirms that the boy is definitely part of the papal house. At the same time, our boy also confirms that this white-haired brat is a monster. Just considering Kina's holy power, he has already surpassed the bishops, and so Isaac figures that this is probably the reason why they made the kid to be the saint candidate 0. Our boy is a little pissed at the papal house for even showing up because it's clear that they're just trying to make the hosts look bad. While our boy is still trying to read the white-haired boy, the child in question mocks all the other contestants for being substandard. He wonders what they stand to gain from terrorizing the young boy, and they're all dumbfounded because they feel so ashamed of themselves. After scolding them, Kina walks up to our boy, insisting that there's absolutely no way that a baby can control his poison immunity. As far as the brat is concerned, it must be the power of the Saintess that is protecting him. Hearing this, our boy is just amused by the opinion because he can now confidently conclude that stupidity runs in the Berit family. Just then, Kina stretches out his hands with magical energy in his palms and leans over to our boy, telling him that he's going to heal him. The white-haired brat lays hands on Isaac, who is just taken aback by the whole thing because he didn't think that the boy would be able to cure poisons already. Looking at the quantity of the guy's holy power, Isaac figures that it must be at least rank 5 already. Our boy also doesn't look too pleased that Kina wants to use him to show off his powers. He admits that it's pretty clever, but then again, he's not going to sit here and let this poser outshine him in the contest. With this in mind, he lands a mean blow on Kina's face, which knocks the wind out of the brat as well as the holy power he was just flexing with. The other kids notice that Kina's powers suddenly disappeared, and the brat is equally horrified by this. He realizes that his holy power was just disrupted by that baby and is mortified because he can't believe that the blonde baby babbling in front of him is even more powerful than he is. Kina is consumed by the shock, but this feeling quickly turns to rage as he prepares to teach that Joshua boy a lesson for making a fool of him. Isaac notices the brat glaring at him, and he finds it annoying that Kina thinks he has the right to even look at him that way. Feeling insulted, our boy threatens to smack Kina in the head with a bottle, but just when he's about to jump the Pope's grandson, Shuri comes out of nowhere to stop him. The other kids figure that he is protecting Isaac because they're family, and they start suggesting that the Joshua boy wouldn't be able to stand up to the papal house. They keep sputtering this trash while Shuri struggles to keep his baby cousin from going berserk. He feels sorry for the others because they have no idea how powerful Isaac is, and he also knows that they would all have taken a bottle to the head by now if it wasn't for him. Seeing that Isaac's threat has been culled, Kina just laughs off the whole thing, claiming that the child was just surprised by his power since he's still just a baby after all. At this point, Kina bids the Joshua kids goodbye, and as he walks away, he advises them to get whatever little toys they can from the treasury to save some face for their family. The brat taunts them so hard, but Shuri refuses to let go of Isaac because the baby would literally rip the Pope's grandson to pieces if he had the chance right now. Before leaving the scene, Kina turns to them and informs them that the greatest treasure in there belongs to him already, stating that Joshua will never even get close to acquiring the body of the Skeleton King. Once the brat is gone, Shuri can't help but think about how annoying he is. He wonders why Kina came here to start talking shit about them, and while he's still pondering on this, Isaac suddenly attacks him, demanding to know what Kina meant when he said they would never get the Skeleton King's body. Our boy drags Shuri to the floor as he interrogates him, desperate to find out what's up with the Skeleton King's body. At this point, the terrified boy reveals that the matriarch said that there's a special technique prize for anyone who manages to retrieve the body of the Skeleton King from the treasury. As soon as Isaac hears this, he immediately imagines his corpse being presented to the winner of the contest as a prize, and this makes him really furious because he wonders what kind of games Melissa is playing with his body. The story continues as the children remain stuck in the treasury. At this point, our boy Isaac is already all out of poison juice, so he just sits and gets lost in thought while Shuri stays next to him. He thinks about how he spent hundreds of years cultivating mana into his old body. Reaching rank 10 would be child's play for him if you could just get his hands on it, but there's one big problem right now. Even though he manages to acquire the corpse, he doesn't know how he can possibly sneak it out when all of the other kids around are also aiming for it. Apparently, they're all desperate to win the special technique that Melissa promised, and that might be a problem for Isaac. Seeing that he probably won't be able to sneak the body out, he figures that he'll just knock out anyone that gets in his way. After all, he's a lot stronger than all of them. While he's thinking about this, his thoughts are interrupted when someone tells all of the children to gather around. The elder walks up to them and informs the contestants that they will be departing soon. As such, she wants them to listen carefully to what she's about to say. The hooded old lady reveals that this treasury is a holy place and starts talking about what the previous saintess thinks of it. As soon as Isaac hears this, he realizes that the elder is probably about to give them a history lesson, so he quickly loses interest and decides to go ahead by himself. Shuri catches the baby crawling away, so he tries to stop him, asking him where the hell he thinks he's going. Before he can stop Isaac, the overpowered toddler blasts off like a rocket, leaving a huge cloud of dust behind. The loud noise from the blast leaves everyone else shocked, and that's when they see the 1-year-old moving at blistering speed. Our boy uses his swift steps technique to get away from them and decides that it's time for him to try out the new holy art that he learned. The elder sees him running away and furiously bawls out to him, claiming that he's going to the area that's off limits because if he goes there, traps will be activated all over the treasury. All the other kids are horrified when they hear this, so without a second thought, they all go after Isaac, determined to catch him and stop him from triggering the traps. While that's happening, the scene shifts to the Joshua Mansion ballroom, where we see Rilai and Asili looking really worried. Everything for the contest is being set up and the green-eyed nanny can't think about anything other than Isaac's well-being. A huge crystal ball is set up and connected to the inside of the treasury so that the guests can follow everything going on in there. The host reveals that he will be reporting live with his summons that are following the candidates inside the treasury. That being said, he informs the guests that the candidates are now entering the first chamber that was just opened. Hearing this, Rilai begins to panic because he feels that it's a bit too sudden for them to have entered already. The reporter suddenly reveals that Ammon Aegis is in third place at the moment, and Simon makes it clear to everyone that it's his son. Shuri is in second place, and Gowel almost sounds shocked that his boy is doing that well already, but then casually pretends like it's just what he expected. After that, the reporter reveals that Isaac is in first place, and he's just as shocked as everyone else in the room. Rilai and Asili are equally dumbfounded when they hear this. Back in the treasury, we see one of the knights trying to stop Isaac from going into the forbidden area because he'll just activate more deadly traps. Unfortunately, while he's still trying to get to the toddler, he gets caught in one of the traps and is instantly burnt to a crisp. Shuri is terrified by what he just witnessed, and just like many of the other candidates, he starts wishing that he could just go home because their lives are in danger already. He calls out to Isaac, feeling that the baby is a lunatic for going out of bounds and making a huge mess. The trials of the treasury are already hard enough, and now the candidates need to avoid anti-intruder traps because of the forward baby. Unfortunately for all of them, Isaac doesn't really give a shit about them. He came in heat to retrieve his body, and that's the only thing that matters to him, so he keeps moving until he eventually reaches a gate that he believes leads to the second chapter. Just like that, he enters the side path of the second chamber, and this immediately activates the second layer of traps. Shuri is absolutely furious when he sees what Isaac just did, because he literally warned him not to go there. While the older cousin is busy losing his shit, Whisper comes out of hiding and commends our boy on a job well done, because thanks to the mana cores that Isaac absorbed in the annex, his shadow buddy has also gone up a rank. Hearing this, our boy just laughs mischievously before revealing that this means he can work the cloud harder from now on. With this in mind, he immediately orders Whisper to go out and grab Shuri, so the talking cloud jets into action. On the other side, the remaining candidates are catching their breaths. They didn't think that the contest would be this difficult, and they're starting to realize why the saintesses are so strong. Their conversation is cut short when they see Shuri hovering in the distance. He looks like he's flying, so the other contestants start talking about how unfair it is that his family must have taught him how to fly ahead of time. As you can imagine, that's not the case, because Shuri definitely doesn't have the ability to fly. In reality, he's being carried away to safety by Whisper, but none of the other children can see the black cloud. Of course, Shuri knows that he's not actually flying by himself, so he pleads with the creature to put him down. Hearing this, Whisper grants him his wish, but not in a very subtle manner. He drops the kid like a big bag of sand and informs Isaac. At this point, Shuri is really pissed, so he yells at the toddler, telling him to stop messing around. Sure, he made it past the first chamber with ease, but Shuri makes it clear to him that he could actually die if he's not careful starting from this second chamber. Apparently, this part of the treasury was designed to teach the saintesses how to overcome fear and choose the right path, but while he's still trying to advise the baby, He gets burned by one of said traps. Seeing this, Isaac makes it clear that he doesn't need a lecture or blabbering and simply asks Shuri to tell him what happens in the second chamber. At this point, the injured boy just warns the toddler not to attack the enemies in the second chamber under any circumstance. As you can imagine, this just sounds like nonsense to our boy because they're literally enemies, and that's exactly why he should attack them. In response, Shuri states once again that the only way to pass the second chamber is by waiting 3 minutes for the enemies to disappear after they appear. He begs our boy not to attack no matter what comes out and desperately hopes that Isaac understands him because they're screwed otherwise. At this point, our hero realizes that the second chamber is a test of patience. To him, it's such a cliche, and it also sounds like it would be a cakewalk for him. After all, he just needs to refrain from attacking the creatures in there and wait for 3 minutes instead. With this in mind, he pushes the main gate of the second chapter open and he's welcomed into the Chamber of Tranquility. A voice talks about how patience is a virtue and a cold rationale, before telling Isaac not to let himself be shaken, but maintain tranquility instead. As the door finally opens, the voice claims that his patience will lead him to the light, and our boy looks so mesmerized by the sights before him. Way back in the treasury, we see Kina and some other kids wandering in confusion. They look lost and one of them starts to wonder if they'll be okay because they're literally in last place. In response, the white-haired brat reminds him that there's no need for them to endure the dangers ahead first. As far as Kina is concerned, it's better to let the meat shield stand in front and trigger all the traps ahead. Besides, he also knows that a B-rank demon guards the entrance of the second chamber, and so he's certain that those who ran ahead are now all stumped at the entrance. Kina is so confident about this, and when he sees the bright light coming from far ahead, he tells the others to take a look and see. They all seem confused, so he casually informs them that the real trial has already begun. Back at the entrance of the second chamber, we see Isaac and Shuri looking extremely overwhelmed by the figure in front of them. That blinding light was actually coming from a friendly-looking god at the gate. He tells the boys to not be shaken and assures them that their patience will guide them to the light. Just when it looks like things are about to be a lot calmer, the good-looking god instantly transforms into a demon that wishes death upon them. Unfortunately, our boy isn't able to stay calm when this happens, so he curses the demon and activates his instackle to attack it without a second thought. Shuri is extremely disappointed when he sees what just because he knows that they're cooked for not staying calm long enough. Enraged, he yells at Isaac, calling him a dumbass, but the toddler doesn't even show any remorse. As far as our boy is concerned, there's no way he could have held back after being confronted by such an ugly-ass demon. Just so you can understand what a terrible job Isaac did. He only kept his cool for 3 seconds out of 3 minutes, but for some reason, he lasted 3 seconds more than Whisper even expected. Anyway, that loud voice from earlier suddenly informs our boy that he failed the challenge. Of course, there's a repercussion for this, so our favorite toddler is about to be faced with the wrath of divine punishment. That being said, a massive rock monster with a flaming core emerges out of the chamber and Shuri looks like he's about to shut his pants. In his mind, they're absolutely screwed and there's no way they're getting out of this alive. But while he's whining at the back, our boy quickly activates his powers. Isaac isn't afraid of the massive monster at all. He knows he can defeat it, so he unleashes a supercharged blast of mana at the monster and kills it in a single blow. The blast creates a massive hole in the creature's core and Shuri can't believe his eyes. All he can do is wonder what exactly the deal is with this overpowered toddler. After defeating the rock monster, the creature crumbles to the floor in a huge pile of stones. Isaac crawls over to the remains to examine it and is disappointed when he realizes that it was actually a B-rank demon. It's really poor to him, but then all of a sudden, he realizes that the golem was actually created by his subordinate. This subordinate was a member of the 14 elite demons under his command. They were the strongest demons that our boy trained while he was the Skeleton King, and that's why he knows that the innate magic in this golem belongs to one of those 14 demons. Isaac becomes really curious all of a sudden, wondering if the demon is working here under the Joshua house now or if it has something to do with his former body's presence being sealed away somewhere in the treasury. At this point, our boy is stumped, so he's desperate to find out more about all of this. He crawls back into the chamber to investigate further and Shuri calls out to him, wondering where he's going this time around. His yelling is interrupted when someone arrives at the screen laughing. The brat finds it really funny that the Joshua boys turned out to be so useful in the trial. Shuri is so confused when he hears this strange voice, so he turns around to see who it is, and that's when we get to yet another brat in the contest. This time around, it's a redhead named Nigel Seffet, who happens to be the third son of Ducal House Seffet. Nigel is the red faith of the 5 great faiths, but he's also an arrogant prick. He thanks the Joshua boys for helping them deal with the gatekeeper to the second chamber and then tells them to get out of the way so that he can be the first to enter. These guys clearly don't like the Joshua boys, and one reason is probably because they suffered so much as a result of Isaac's recklessness. Some of them even think that the Joshua boys intentionally triggered the traps to quickly eliminate them. Shuri is taken aback by all the accusations while our boy is just surprised that there are still so many survivors after he activated so many traps. Nigel keeps lashing out at the boys, claiming that he never expected the Joshua house to be so cowardly and specifically accuses Shuri of plotting the whole thing. Once again, the poor guy ends up taking the blame for something he had nothing to do with. He tries to clear his name, assuring the other candidates that he's not working with Isaac. Bro literally falls on his knees to exonerate himself, but he's simply ignored. Nigel is more concerned with finding out how a 1-year-old baby managed to dodge all the traps without getting caught in one. It doesn't make any sense to him, so he starts a little investigation and instantly spots the artifact around our boy's neck. He snatches the ring with blistering speed, believing that our boy's insane luck must have something to do with it. After stealing the ring, he calls out to his buddies, telling them that they'll be able to avoid all the traps moving forward, but even Shuri is disappointed at his guessing instincts because he's way off. Besides feeling sorry for the clueless redhead, Shuri also wonders why Isaac is being so calm about the situation. He knows that the baby would never let some steak from him without fighting back, so it's really suspicious. Nigel and his gang continue their journey and advance toward the second chamber, claiming that they don't need the Joshua boys anymore. The redhead thinks about the Skeleton King's body and how it's something that even past saints and saintesses were unable to bring back. As far as he's concerned, it now belongs to House Sephet of Red Faith. Nigel is so confident that he'll bring back the trophy because he believes that the ring he stole will protect him from the traps. Unfortunately, he quickly finds out that he's dead wrong because after only a few steps into the chamber, he activates a trap that burns him immensely. The inferno rages on, and as the other candidates scream in agony, Shuri finally realizes why Isaac didn't fight back earlier. It turns out that our boy was baiting them on purpose, and now that they've cleared the path, the Joshua boys can easily advance into the second chamber. Shuri carries our boy on his shoulders once again, and they make their way past the burned candidates lying around them. Isaac laughs smugly as he looks over the wiped-out competition, thinking about how all the mines and similar traps in the second chamber were set off by Nigel's carelessness. This time around, he's the one who thanks the redhead for his sacrifice. As much as he took out a good portion of the competition with this sly move, he notices that there are some other kids still following him closely. Those guys have been waiting for him to clear the path for them each time, and they seem to be really fans. They feel that he has divine energy, which isn't a surprise at all since he's from the Saintess's family after all. To them, Nigel was dumb to think the ring would save him. As far as they're concerned, there's no way someone from Joshua would be so cowardly. These guys are practically fangirling at this point, but Isaac isn't even slightly flattered by their words. Whisper suggests that they've learned of his master's magnificence, but our boy makes it clear that he doesn't need their reverence. While all of that is happening, Shuri just wishes he could tell those guys at the back to run for their lives because the little monster on his shoulders is even more terrifying than any demon. The ass-kissers keep showering Isaac with praise, claiming that he's definitely the saint if there's really one among them. At this point, our boy is starting to get irritated by all of this, but he keeps his cool, and that's when one of them introduces himself. This cute little guy is Paris Julius, the second prince of the Julius kingdom, and he claims that it's a pleasure to meet the youngest son of Joshua. Hearing this, Isaac's eyes widen with realization. He knows that the Julius kingdom is the one at the east of Hela and remembers hearing that their prince received a divine blessing. With this in mind, he starts to think that Paris might actually be useful after all. A while later, they arrive at the next important location, so our boy pulls on Shuri's hair to make him stop. They've finally reached the gate to the third chamber, and once again, another loud voice welcomes the candidates. The voice reveals that this third chapter is the Chamber of Rumination. Just then, several stone angels appear before them as the voice encourages them to demonstrate their courage and resolve. Hearing this, the Askissers at the back start to celebrate because they realize that they were right to follow Isaac instead of Nigel, and for some reason, they also believe that this means the Skeleton King's body is theirs. The hooded angel at the entrance goes on to tell them what their mission is. He assures them that the test here is simple, but then goes on to reveal that they have to defeat the angels, including him. At the moment, our boy still looks pretty overwhelmed, like he's in awe or something. Unlike him, the other candidates are already pumped up, feeling excited to face off against the stone angels to claim their honor. After staring at the gatekeeper for a while, a mischievous grin creeps up on Isaac's face because he suddenly realizes something that is going to be very useful. With this in mind, he concludes that this chamber is going to be a lot of fun and then informs Shuri that the gatekeepers are lying. This makes sense to Shuri for some reason because he's already created a pattern in his mind. The first chamber was the Chamber of Selection, where Isaac ran recklessly. The second one was the Chamber of Tranquility, where Isaac couldn't hold back at all. This third chamber is the Chamber of Rumination, but that word is just the hint that Shuri needs. He needs to remember what happened in the first and second chambers, and since Isaac did the exact opposite to scale through, Shuri concludes that they must not attack the gatekeepers. All of a sudden, our boy orders the other candidates to go over to the side, and they do so without hesitation. Shuri is confused when he sees this because he does understand why the toddler is helping them. But then again, he figures that the child has Joshua blood, and so that means he can still show acts of kindness despite literally being the devil. Even though it's quite faint, Shuri understands that the boy must have inherited the virtue of the saintesses somehow. With this in mind, he starts to think that he might have misjudged the baby all this time. Shuri starts to see the crazy toddler in a different light, feeling that he's probably just like the saintess, and that he'll show the others the correct path. Unfortunately, he's about to take all of this back really soon because our boy is about to do something really crazy. In the blink of an eye, Isaac hurls a huge blast of fire magic at the gatekeeper's face, which leaves Shuri absolutely dumbfounded. The Stone Angel is furious. He claims that they have failed, and so he retaliates with a massive explosion, but for some reason, he takes out his anger on the other candidates that our boy sent to the sidelines. He clearly set them up so that they could take the fall, and when Shuri sees everything that just happened, he concludes that the toddler on his shoulders is just a crazy bastard. Shuri is pretty horrified, but our boy finds the scene amusing and claims that it's quite a familiar sight. The hooded angel is revealed to actually be a demon who tells them that true saints are not foolish enough to trust the words of others so easily. It turns out that the reason our boy kept staring at the gatekeepers before was because he recognized them from his past life. These stone angels are actually puppets made from the magic of the 14 elite demons as well, and that's why he knows that they are regarded as the lying dolls. After successfully making a fool of the other candidates, our boy laughs maniacally and tells her demons that it's time to teach those brats the bitter struggles of life. While Isaac is going crazy with power, Shuri just looks so overwhelmed by the fact that he's stuck with such an unpredictable baby with a penchant for destruction. The lying dolls unleash huge fiery blasts on the poor kids that were foolish enough to trust Isaac. They all scream in horror and try to run away, but the attacks are ceaseless and it doesn't take long for some of them to start crying. The worst part about their situation right now is the fact that Isaac and Shuri are no longer anywhere to be found. Apparently, our boy used a magic spell to make himself and his cousin invisible to the other candidates and even the destructive fire demons. The terrified kids don't understand where the Joshua boys went because they were just here with them a few seconds ago. While they're all trying to avoid getting blown to bits, they also start searching for Isaac and Shuri. Speaking of the two Joshua boys, they're standing only a few feet away but no one can see them. Shuri watches in horror as the candidates run for their lives while Isaac seems to be having a lot of fun watching them. He finally got to try out his rank 6 holy invisibility art and it definitely didn't disappoint. This was a blessing that their uncle gave them to use for emergencies, but Isaac found a way to use it to have a good time. Paris Julius is also not in any danger at the moment because our boy also gave him the invisibility skill, which he is really grateful for. He thanks Isaac for it and the toddler just waved it off before tossing a ring to him. The young boy catches it, wondering what it's for, and begins to think that he was given it because he's not used to fighting against demons. Once again, he thanks our boy for it, promising that he would never forget the gesture. He's so grateful that he promises to even tell the king about it too. His display of gratitude is cut short when he starts getting the life sucked out of him. Isaac laughs maniacally as this happens and Whisper commends him for it, claiming that it's just the kind of thing he expects of his master. Prince Paris Julius had the most holy power out of all the other candidates, and so he was always going to be a target for a mana hound like Isaac. At this point, you'd start to think that our hero might actually be a true villain and not just some misunderstood baby. He happily sucks Paris of everything he's got inside of him while Shuri just watches in horror, wondering where the hell his uncle Rilai found this monster disguised as a baby. After running all over the place, the other children finally decide that it's time to fight for themselves, so they father around and stand up to the skeleton angels trying to kill them. One creates a shield to block their attacks while another activates his holy defense art. They work together to defend themselves against the demon, but the creature is extremely powerful and unfazed by their efforts. The lying doll tells them to simply accept their punishment, but they refuse to back down, so once they've activated their defense art, they can finally launch an attack together. Just when the boy at the back is about to launch the magical blast, something shocking happens and it's like he gets knocked out cold all of a sudden. His partner is shocked when this happens and begins to panic because now he's all alone in the fight. He wonders what's going on, so he turns around to see, and that's when he finds his buddy groaning on the floor. He has no idea what just happened, and while he's still trying to figure it out, a floating ring hovers towards him and sucks all the holy power out of him. As you can imagine, this is all Isaac's doing because even the demon is shocked when it sees all of its opponents being sucked dry. The demon is so taken aback by the scenes that he ceases his attacks just so that he can try to understand what the hell is going on. The lying doll looks around, wondering where all the others that fell for the lie are. He doesn't see any conscious beings around, and he definitely doesn't see the floating ring that's been doing a whole lot of damage. Whisper reveals that they have successfully absorbed the holy power of everyone on this side of the chamber, so our boy decides that it's time for them to go target the candidates on the other side. Without wasting a second, the floating demon cloud springs into action to go suck the life out of all the other kids in the chamber. It's practically impossible for them to defend themselves against Whisper because they can't even see him, and that's why he's able to keep catching them off guard. Whisper sucks the holy power of the next kid, leaving his partner shocked. Even though he's doing a lot of damage, he points out the bright side to the weaklings, which is the fact that the lying dolls stop attacking them once they go down. As far as Whisper is concerned, it's better for him to take their holy power and knock them out than for them to mess up against the lying doll and actually get seriously hurt or worse. That being said, he suggests that he's actually doing them a favor. After draining out yet another kid, he reports back to Isaac, assuring his master that he's almost done with his assignment. Just when it looks like he's about to be through with his power-sucking mission, a huge ball of energy erupts behind him and he has no idea what it is. Whisper looks up to try and figure out what this huge surge of energy could be, and that's when he gets blasted down from the sky. The talking shadow gets struck down, and that's when we see that the person responsible for this is actually Kina Barrett. The arrogant brat enters the scene, looking really proud of himself for finally finding Isaac. This kid must be really powerful for him to have been able to see Whisper and also spot our boy even while using the holy invisibility art. Our boy looks unfazed regardless because he has also been looking for Kina. Shuri, on the other hand, looks absolutely mortified that the Pope's grandson is this powerful. Sure, he knew that the boy was called a genius, but he never imagined that the young master would be this overpowered. Kina decides to flex his powers a little by introducing his massive phoenix-like pet. This just leaves Shuri even more overwhelmed because he knows that being able to summon a holy spirit at this age is just going too far. While Shuri is busy dreading the Pope's grandson, our boy Isaac just remains absolutely unfazed. He's not intimidated by Kina in the slightest, and he almost looks bored if you look closely. The white-haired boy continues talking, admitting that he was surprised to learn that there was another person that could take down a demon. He asks Isaac if he led the other kids into a trap like he did in the first chamber. An ominous smile creeps up on the white-haired boy's face as he concludes that this is exactly what he did, but the injured kids keep defending our favorite toddler. Apparently, they still believe that Isaac was trying to protect them. They claim that the baby did all of this while trying to do the trial for them and that he even told them which way to go. As such, they're convinced that Isaac saved them, oblivious to the fact that he only needed them so that he could suck them dry of their holy power. Hearing this, Whisper is delighted that these guys adore his master just as much as he does, but the baby in question is just baffled at how insane these candidates can be. As far as he is concerned, these guys aren't right in the head either for thinking that he was trying to save them. At the same time, the talking cloud starts to realize that this is probably what they call Stockholm Syndrome. Just like Isaac, Kina can't believe that these kids think that the toddler was trying to save them. He scolds them for being so short-sighted and tells them that they should be embarrassed to even call themselves saint candidates. In his mind, anyone who would need to be saved by Isaac is not even worthy to be in the contest. Kina calls our boy a little runt, and his new fans just keep defending him. They snap at the Pope's grandson, reminding him that he was behind all of them the whole time and that he has no right to say anything mean about Isaac, who has been spearheading the entire journey through the treasury. They keep attacking Kina, reminding him that he didn't do anything all this time and just let them go ahead to trigger all the traps. With that being said, they make it clear to him that Isaac is even more of a saint than him, because he just came all this way without actually doing anything throughout the contest. They continue to discredit Kina, claiming that they'll even tell all the adults about his cowardice when they get out of the treasury. They're ready to tell everyone that Kina didn't do anything and that Isaac saved all of them, because they want everyone to know that it's better to follow House Joshua rather than the selfish papal house. These guys are defending our boy with all the energy they have left, and Shuri just can't help but feel sorry for them. They have no idea that they're defending the devil child that's sucking them dry without any remorse. Of course, Shuri isn't stupid enough to say such a thing out loud for Isaac and his demon subjects to hear, so he just keeps this thought to himself, hoping that the other kids eventually find out who the real danger is. While they're all still attacking Kina, a loud noise interrupts them. They look over to the source and see the huge ball of power floating up to the ceiling of the treasury. They all watch with their jaws dropped and realize that the gate to the third chamber just popped up. They realize that this means they're done with the second chamber, and this is confirmed when a powerful voice congratulates the candidates on completing the second chapter. This voice reveals that it's the last gatekeeper of the treasury, and that's when we see that the huge fiery ball is the one talking. All of a sudden, the gatekeeper tells the children to choose, asking them if they'll choose the treasure here and finish the test or if they will face a trial to enter the third chamber. Hearing the intimidating voice give them such a tough choice to make, most of the candidates begin to mumble in confusion. None of them are sure of what they want to do, and while they look like they're starting to panic, Kina just looks bored of everything. One of the candidates suddenly blurts out, stating that they'll definitely pick the third chamber, but before he can finish talking, the powerful voice cuts him off, warning him to answer carefully. Once again, the gatekeeper asks if they want to pick their treasure and finish the test here, or if they want to enter the third chamber and face the unknown challenge waiting there. At this point, the pressure starts getting to the candidates. The gatekeeper informs them that they will discover the treasure of the third chamber if they pass the trial, but if they do not pass, well, the consequence is death. This revelation sends chills down their spines, and while the others are shivering, our boy just listens carefully to the voice. Whisper also pays close attention and recognizes the mana in the voice. Hearing this, Isaac can already tell that it's a dragon behind that voice. He hasn't seen one in a while, and so he's certain that failure in the third chamber will truly lead to death. The other kids don't have any idea what kind of horror awaits them in the third chamber, so they decide to go in for the last trial, feeling that they can face anything to become a saint. They all decide to go in, so the gatekeeper reminds them that they're risking death by facing this trial. They insist on going in, so the voice finally opens the gate, revealing the next challenge, which leaves everyone except our boy mortified. As the third chamber opens up, the final gatekeeper informs the candidates that all of them who gathered here to become the saint must face a trial. The whole place begins to rumble and dust shoots up into the air, causing all the kids to cough and choke. Most of them are struggling to breathe and look extremely terrified, but of course, the one-year-old menace among them seems to be having the time of his life. Isaac knows that he's so close to retrieving his old body, so the smile on his face is wider than ever. The gatekeeper claims that this final trial will be simple, and even though the previous guardians clearly lied about the difficulty of their tests, this one seems to be pretty simple because all the candidates have to do is worship God. A huge statue emerges all of a sudden, and as the dust settles, the kids remaining in the treasury get a clearer view of what it is. They all walk up to the huge statue looking pretty confused because they're not exactly sure why they have to deal with more stone figures. However, upon closer inspection, they realize that this is actually the statue of the cardinal. As soon as they figure this out, the gatekeeper sternly tells them to show their respect to God, claiming that only those who have shown their piety in front of the statue can finally go into the third chamber. The kids aren't exactly sure what the task is, but judging by the earlier instruction, they figure that all they need to do is just kneel and pray in front of the statue. That's a really straightforward and simple task, so it's quite suspicious because they all expected this trial to be a tough one. Their task is way too simple for comfort, so they're a little reluctant and skeptical about the whole thing. While the others are trying to wrap their heads around this last trial, Isaac seems to be getting quite upset at the back. He doesn't understand what kind of bullshit trial this is, and he's particularly pissed off by the fact that the gatekeeper expects him to kneel before a statue. Our boy is literally the skeleton king, so the last thing he would ever want to do is kneel before a statue of the guy who messed with him for hundreds of years. Remember that mischievous god from the beginning of the story who wanted to turn our boy into a big. Well, this is his statue, so you can imagine why Isaac is fuming right now. As the toddler's blood continues to boil, the other candidates keep racking their brains, trying to figure out if they should proceed with the trial or not. One of them steps forward, feeling that he should probably go ahead since all he has to do is pray to the supreme god of their world. With this in mind, the kid finally decides to go on his knees and then immediately starts praying to the statue, glorifying it and worshipping it sincerely while all the others watch him carefully. After his prayer, the gatekeeper's voice chimes in again, telling the boy that he has learned well. The voice commends the candidate and then allows him to pass into the third chamber. Hearing this, the boy is really excited, so he does a little celebration as he can't wait to get going. The remaining kids realize that nothing bad happened to him, so they all decide to follow the first guy's footsteps since all they have to do is pray to the statue. A few of them are still skeptical, and while that's happening, Isaac suddenly hops off Shuri's back and starts crawling away from the statue. Shuri tries to stop the menacing baby, hoping to keep him out of any trouble, but our boy just evades his big cousin, but not before kicking him in the leg to immobilize him. As far as he's concerned, worshipping that statue is absolutely crazy, especially since he knows that praying is an art that is taught by the Holy See. He used to be the Skeleton King, a powerful demon that the humans prayed most against, so you can imagine why he's not a fan. Kina Barit, being a member of the papal family, has very good knowledge of prayer since it's taught by his family. That being said, he steps forward to demonstrate for the rest of the candidates, telling them to watch carefully. The kid goes on his knees, and as soon as he touches the floor to begin his prayer, everything around him starts glowing with holy energy. He already knows that it's working, so he informs the rest that this is the proper way to worship their supreme god. After witnessing this, all forms of uncertainty are wiped away, and all the kids are desperately eager to try out what Kina just did. They begin to pray together, giving all glory and honor to their god, while Shuri watches in horror, knowing that his monster baby cousin would not like to find him in such a position. At first, he refuses to join in the prayer, knowing that Isaac could do something horrible to him, but then all of a sudden, the gatekeeper calls out to him, asking if he is giving up and choosing death rather than joining his peers. Terrified of what the guardian might do to him, he quickly changes his mind and promises to worship the statue too. Just then, it becomes clear that there's only one person around who's not praying to the statue, and of course, it's our boy who's casually sitting alone in a corner. The gatekeeper asks him why he is not kneeling like the rest, and of course, he's completely unfazed by this because he strongly believes that it would be insane for him to kneel before the statue. The other kids turn around to see Isaac looking so nonchalant about the whole thing, so they're very confused. They wonder why he's doing this and begins to assume that he probably has an issue with his faith or something. They start talking trash, suggesting that the Joshua family are indeed slowly losing their faith. Hearing the others say such a thing, Shuri just gets pissed even while in the middle of his prayer. He desperately wishes that the devilish baby would just behave and pray like everyone else instead of sullying their family name. While Shuri is getting frustrated about the whole thing, Kina just mischievously, looking happy about the situation because at the back of his mind, he knows that Isaac's behavior will be recorded and ruin his chances of becoming the saint. After all, he probably wants his saint candidate position taken away if he's behaving like this toward their god. Kina feels that it doesn't even matter how talented the boy is, because it's going to be over for him if he has no faith. Seeing that this is the way things are going, the white-haired boy concludes that he's been worried for nothing this whole time. As far as he's concerned, Isaac's chances are now very slim, which means that he's no longer a threat. Just then, the gatekeeper points out how the child of the saintess is acting disrespectfully, but even after being called out like this, our boy still doesn't give a shit. In fact, he feels annoyed that the voice would talk to him like that, so he snaps at the guardian, claiming that he'd rather die than kneel in front of the huge statue. The guardian is dumbfounded by such both rants, but Isaac doesn't even stop there because he suddenly claims that they can just kill him right away because he's never going to worship the statue. Isaac's rant is cut short all of a sudden when he feels an overwhelming power radiating from the statue. The energy exuded is so potent that our boy is forced to keep quiet for a while and watch as everyone else bows to the god. At this point, the angry god speaks up, claiming that all those who disrespect him will die. Even after such an overwhelming display, our boy still refuses to bow down. In fact, he gets pissed and charges at the statue, telling it to go ahead and kill him then. He blasts himself toward the statue with flaming fists, determined to destroy it viciously, but at this point, even Whisper becomes a little nervous. The talking cloud tries to stop Isaac, warning him of how dangerous the situation is. Unfortunately, our boy doesn't really give a shit, so he keeps charging at the statue with his flaming fists, as he yells at the god to die. Seeing a baby display such fearlessness and resolve, the statue is taken off guard, finding the child's behavior outstanding. As you can imagine, this is like the last thing our boy thought he would hear, and so he stops in his tracks as the ball of fire in his hand disappears. Just like that, the guardian reveals that the little baby has passed the test, telling him that he can now move into the third chamber. Sure enough, Kina can't believe what he just heard, so his jaws dropped in disbelief. He is so shocked to hear that the gatekeeper just said Isaac can go forward into the third chamber, so he tries to figure out what the hell is going on. From what he remembers, the guardian said that they need to show piety to pass, so he doesn't get what the gatekeeper is talking about all of a sudden. As far as he's concerned, the baby shouldn't be able to pass without even praying. Unfortunately, the gatekeeper doesn't think that's the case because he insists that the only one here who is right to go into the third chamber is Isaac, because the child is the only one who showed his faith in God apparently. As you can imagine, our boy is absolutely dumbfounded by this assertion because he literally had zero faith in that deity that he hates so much. For some reason, the gatekeeper believes that Isaac showed his faith because he refused to kneel to the statue, knowing that it was just stone and not the actual god. That being said, the guardian lashes out at the other candidates and scolds them for bowing down to an idol. This little twist catches all the other kids off guard, and all they can do is stand there in shock because they realize that they fucked up by praying to the statue. At this point, it's clear that they've been tricked because a statue is still an idol even if it's in the form of their god. Some still insist that the stone sculpture is a portrayal of the image of their god, which is a pretty useless argument since the guardian has already made it clear that they all failed the trial. While they're busy arguing, the gatekeeper tells the rest of them to look at Isaac, stating that the baby did not lose his faith even in the face of death. As a result, he decides that the young master of House Joshua is the only one who has the right to enter into the third chamber. Hearing this, our boy starts acting all cocky even though he knows that it was clearly not his plan. While Isaac is enjoying his victory, Kina Barit is particularly irritated by the outcome. He can't believe what just happened, so he refuses to accept the conclusion. With this in mind, he confronts the gatekeeper, pointing out how Isaac is just a baby who can't even speak. And for this reason, he insists that there's no way to really tell if the child didn't kneel to the statue because of his faith. Hearing this, Whisper admits that the white-haired brat is actually right even though he's clearly saying all of this out of spite. Our boy knows this too, but he doesn't really give a shit. Anyway, back to the raging kid. He keeps trying to prove his point, claiming that there's no way Isaac has that much faith if he doesn't have a stigmata. A stigmata is actually a scar that appears on the body due to holy powers, and when our boy hears this, he begins to panic a little. The other candidates notice that Isaac truly doesn't have a stigmata, which is pretty surprising because even they have the scar. Among all the saint candidates, Isaac appears to be the only one without a stigmata, and when Kina confirms this, he figures that the baby should just go ahead and give up yet, since it's impossible for a saint candidate not to have the scar. At this point, the gatekeeper reveals that it's because Isaac is a baby and explains that he doesn't need to have a stigmata yet. Kina and the others are really shocked to hear this, but what's really shocking is the fact that the statue could actually move this whole time. As Kina continues to rant, the gatekeeper assures him that babies do not need to have the stigmata. Hearing this, the white-haired brat suggests that he should also be allowed into the third chamber because if a baby without a stigmata is going, then why shouldn't he when he actually has the scar? The other kids chime in too, claiming that it's proof that they're saint candidates since they have the scar, and so the statue begins to reconsider. He thinks about it for a second time and then asks if they all feel the same way about this, explaining that the stigmata showing doesn't necessarily mean that they were so great. The remaining candidates all feel the same way Kina does, so the gatekeeper decides that they can all go into the third chamber. As you can imagine, this is shocking for Isaac to hear because he was just in the middle of celebrating a few seconds ago. He is so confused that the guardian would allow all of them in, but that's when the gatekeeper reveals the condition attached. All of a sudden, the huge talking statue begins to give off an ominous vibe as it tells them that they can all fly into the third chamber like moths. Kina senses the vibe immediately, as well as the terrifying demonic energy that is released all of a sudden. The white-haired boy and many of the others struggle to breathe because of this, and while they're gasping for air, the gatekeeper teases them, asking if they can feel the demonic energy from the body of the Skeleton King. The gatekeeper scolds the children for not knowing their place, claiming that he was going to spare the weaklings who could not withstand the energy. But apparently, that's no longer the plan because most of the kids are already on the floor, choking to their deaths. While that's happening to the others, Isaac looks completely unaffected by the demonic energy. In fact, he's extremely excited because he realizes that his old body is right in the next chamber. Isaac traces the source of the demonic energy to the source and concludes that it's where his former body lies. He never thought he'd see it again after he self-destructed in the divine realm, but now, he can't even contain his excitement when he sees the insane amount of mana leaking out of the body. While the other candidates are trembling in fear, the guardian tells them to watch as the baby proves his faith. He tells them to look at that courageous warrior-like face, but they refuse to believe that courage is the thing driving Isaac. As far as they're concerned, that toddler has lost his mind, but they can't figure out what on earth is wrong with him. The flaming ball returns all of a sudden, telling the other kids that it's not too late to save themselves. The talking fireball comes out of the chamber where the body is and tells the kids that they can still leave now if they sincerely know that they aren't a warrior who can smile in the face of sudden death like Isaac. The gatekeeper promises that he will allow them to pick their treasure from the second chamber if they decide to turn back now while they still have the chance. Hearing this, some of the kids start having second thoughts because they're not even sure how they're supposed to break through all this demonic energy. As such, some suggest that it's better to go back because it's clear that they really might die in the last chapter if they're already struggling this much due to the energy. One of them even wishes that they could just settle for choosing the best items in the second chamber rather than risking their lives to enter the last one. However, Kina Barrett doesn't believe in settling for less. He came here to become the saint and explains that he doesn't need any treasures from the second chamber. With this in mind, he refuses to let any of them retreat, insisting that they will all go into the third chamber even though it looks like a suicide mission right now. As if that's not already scary enough for the other kids, Kina tells the gatekeeper to also activate all the traps in their third chamber. This shocks all the others, who conclude that the Pope's grandson is a crazy bastard. Hearing this, the guardian asks if this is what he wishes, and in response, he talks about how no past saint or saintess were able to bring back the Skeleton King's corpse. Even the saintess Melissa, the genius, didn't manage to do it. At this point, the guardian starts to believe that Kina actually knows something about the third chamber that he isn't letting on. Of course, this is true, and the reason Kina is determined to keep going is because he believes that there is no way the saintess Melissa would intentionally allow children to be killed. As such, difficulty mode is increased because only then will they have surpassed the saintess. The whole time, Isaac just watches Kina in annoyance and concludes that the boy definitely has some loose screws in his head. Anyway, the flaming ball responds to the white-haired brat and agrees to listen to his wish. In fact, he claims that it will be easier to find the true saint among the candidates using this method. All of a sudden, the ball of fire starts exuding some more demonic power, which overwhelms the kids once again. Some of them start blaming Kina, claiming that he should have just gone on his way when he had the chance. They're pretty pissed because he kinda dragged them into this mess with him. The scolding and rants are cut short when the kids are suddenly lifted off the ground by the ominous demonic energy, and at this point, their fears climb up to an all-time high. Just like that, they find themselves in a demonic hellscape, and by the time they find their bearings, they see a demonic skeleton arm reaching out of the small pool in the middle of the chamber. Seeing this, our boy gets really excited because it's almost as if they've just been transported to the demon realm. Whisper is also pretty astounded by the whole thing, and as soon as he spots the skeleton arm coming out of the water, he informs Isaac. Our boy takes a closer look and sees that it's actually the hand of his former body. The talking cloud points this out just to confirm, and the Demon King is beyond elated to see that he's finally found what he's looking for. He can't wait to go grab the rest of his body because he is pretty confident that it was slowly absorbing all the power inside the third chamber all this time. It doesn't take too long for the rest of the candidates to see that the Skeleton King's body is finally out, so they're pretty horrified, especially after sensing the insane amount of demonic energy coming from a single hand. Well, it turns out that they're absolutely wrong about this because all the demonic power isn't even coming from the entire hand but just the skeleton thumb. That just goes to show how overpowered this guy is, and it's also the reason why he can't wait to find all the other fragments of his body, since everything else besides the thumb is a replica. All of a sudden, a terrifying demon shoots out of the skeleton hand, and this almost makes some of the candidates there to shit their pants. They're shocked because they thought that the only demon they would face was the second chamber's gatekeeper. While they are busy lamenting, the voice suddenly reminds them that they were the ones who asked to remove all the safety precautions in the third chamber. Just then, our boy takes a closer look and realizes that he actually recognizes the demon that just came out. The rage-filled monster charges at the candidates for daring to covet the Skeleton King's body in the first place. Even though they're being attacked by a crazy demon, Kina Barrett seems pretty unfazed. The other candidates blame him for putting them in trouble, wondering what they're supposed to do now, but he calmly tells them to just trust him. He claims that he'll make sure everyone here leaves with a treasure in hand, but that's pretty hard to believe with the current state of things. The white-haired brat recognizes the enemy as one of the 14 elite demons who are the most trusted subordinates of the Skeleton King who personally trained them. For some reason, he's not even slightly afraid of them because he thinks that they were morons to have been captured by the papal house. Besides, before this entire competition, he has studied them and prepared a holy art to deal with the elite demons in the treasury. With this in mind, he's very confident that the ultimate treasure basically belongs to him. As the demon prepares to attack him, he activates his magical powers to defend himself. Kina's eyes begin to glow as he commands the creature to kneel before him. With this command, a massive and powerful mask appears above the demon, overwhelming it instantly. The other candidates are just so terrified by everything going on, but they're a little relieved when they see the light of the papal house helping Kina out. While that's going on, Isaac just watches them fool around with a blank expression on his face. The Pope's grandson is really excited when he sees that his holy art worked out well, so he figures that all he needs now is the Skeleton King's body. Unfortunately, there's another hurdle in the way because the demon that was thought to be weakened seems completely fine all of a sudden. However, this time around, it's a lot more furious than before because now it realizes that Kina is the main threat. The creature figures that the white-haired kid is the one who really wants to covet the Skeleton King's body. The scene suddenly changes at this point and we're taken to the entrance of the treasury where the adults have gathered, waiting for the contest to end. They seem pretty worried because they don't even know what's going on inside. It turns out that they've lost contact with the demon familiar that was helping them keep tabs on the candidates. The guy in charge of keeping track suddenly informs them that they have a problem, revealing that the demon in the third chamber was unsealed. Rilai is shocked to hear this, and so is his old friend because they know that the demon in the third chamber is one of the 14 elite demons. The white-haired knight is just dumbfounded at this point and all he can do is panic because he truly has no idea what the hell is going on. This was definitely not part of the plan and now everyone in the treasury is in grave danger for sure. Some of the other adults recall that there were elders in the monitoring chamber and ask about them, but they quickly find out that those elders went to turn off the traps that were activated and never came back. Now, it's clear that the elders are missing, so there's no doubt that the children are in danger. They feel that there's no way the kids can handle the elite demon on their own, so they suggest stopping the ritual immediately to save the candidates. All of a sudden, a bright light shines in front of them and upon taking a second look, they realize that the treasury is opening again for some reason. The light is so intense so they decide it's best to stay away from the entrance due to the dangers of demonic energy leaking out. However, that's not the case because they suddenly realize that there's no demonic aura around. As such, they begin to think that the kids actually defeated the demon. Hearing this, Lord Barit is so excited because he feels that Kina actually did it. To think that they were able to defeat the demon guarding the Skeleton King's body, but at the same time, most of them instantly presume that Kina was the one who did it. They're so certain about this that they even begin to congratulate the Pope even before verifying it. While they're all missing the man's boot, Rilai just boils in anger. Lord Barit accepts all the praise, claiming that Kina deserves it for training so hard. He's also really glad because he feels that he can run it in the Joshua family's faces. He sees them as ignorant imbeciles who dare to challenge the papal house's authority, so now that he believes the Skeleton King's corpse belongs to them, he's convinced that the Joshua family will have no choice but to bow to them. As far as he's concerned, the dignity and honor of their household is gone now. While he's mentally celebrating, his thoughts are suddenly interrupted when the children finally come out of the treasury. The Pope looks up feeling so confident while Rilai is just worried about his nephew's safety. It does take long for the kids to start trooping out to reunite with their guardians. Most of them are still shaken by the horrors they witnessed there, so there's a lot of tears. The concerned adults check to see if the kids are badly injured and Rilai confirms that it's nothing serious so far. That's a relief at least, even though he hasn't seen Shuri or Isaac yet. Apparently, the kids that returned are the ones who didn't make it to the third chamber, so of course, this makes them wonder if something bad happened to the ones in the last chamber. Rilai is extremely worried at this point. He starts sweating a lot as the gears in his head start turning even faster. Just then, someone announces that the last set of candidates are coming out of the treasury. Ammon and Shuri lead the line, and judging by the looks on their faces, it's clear that they've pretty much lost all their innocence inside that cave. Ammon's father rushes to check up on him and Gowl dashes to wrap Shuri up in his arms. He asks him if he's okay, desperately checking to make sure that he's not hurt. While that reunion is ongoing, Rilai's eyes widen in horror because it becomes clear to him that Isaac and Shuri are not together. Pretty much all the other kids have been reunited with their guardians, but Isaac is nowhere to be found. Even Kina is back out, but the Pope doesn't look too happy to see him, especially since there's no skeleton corpse in sight. With a really annoyed look on his face, Barit asks Kina what he's holding in his hand, so the nervous child just fidgets in fear. The old man bluntly asks him where the Skeleton King's corpse is, but all he can do is stutter because he's too afraid and ashamed to say that he didn't get it. His old man is irritated by the treasure he brought back, so he starts scolding him, but while he's chewing the boy out, he's interrupted by a huge ball of energy that appears in the sky. The other adults see this, wondering what is going on, and that's when the giant wolf spirit appears carrying Isaac in its mouth. They're all shocked to see this, and Riley is equally bewildered while the baby in question just keeps a smug look on his face, knowing that he just left everyone speechless. The giant wolf spirit finally comes out to the ground, and the white-haired knight is the first to rush over to Isaac. Vasily Elarch follows of course, but then stops in her tracks when they identify that wolf is the young holy dragon. It turns out this is the creature that guards the treasury, and Riley confirms that she's actually right. Right now, it has the form of a wolf, but its energy indicates that it's definitely the holy dragon. Riley recalls that the matriarch had a good relationship with the dragon and invited it into the treasury, so it makes sense that the powerful creature would be here. The holy dragon is so magnificent that even its presence alone is so surreal. The moment is quickly ruined, however, because someone there just keeps making a slurping sound. After a little investigation, the adults discover that Isaac has been the one sucking on someone, but that's not even the most annoying part, because it turns out that he's been sucking the body of the Skeleton King. Most of the elders are very taken aback by this because they have no idea why the baby would even put that in his mouth. Even though they're disgusted and freaked out, they can't help but acknowledge the fact that the toddler was the one who brought back the Skeleton King's body. At this point, it's clear that Kina wasn't the one who captured the ultimate treasure, and the white-haired boy probably wishes that he could disappear right about now. Refusing to believe that his own blood could be bested by a toddler, Burrit asks Kina if he gave the body of the Skeleton King to the baby. Apparently, this clever pope is trying to create a narrative here, so he makes it look like Kina gave the treasure to Isaac just so that he could let the host save some face. The sneaky old bastard suggests this and then reminds everyone that this is exactly the kind of virtue that a saint must have. Riley is furious when he realizes that manipulative game that the pope is playing, but he just keeps his cool. Thankfully, there's someone there to make sure our boy gets the credit he deserves. A powerful voice chimes in suddenly, claiming that Burrit just spoke foolishly, and then makes it clear that Isaac is the one who brought out the body of the Skeleton King. The Holy Dragon calls the members of the Burrit family foolish for trying to discredit a toddler, and so the Pope realizes that his boy was truly second place. We're suddenly shown a flashback of what really happened to Kina during his battle with the elite demon. When the demon charges at him a second time, he begins to panic, wondering why the holy art didn't work, and then the beast just leaps toward him, calling him filthy trash, and just when it looks like he's about to be smashed to death, a huge shield appears above their heads to save them. Kina clearly wasn't the one who did it, so he's just as shocked as the other kids when he sees the defense barrier. It's a blue holy art shield as well, so they can confirm that it was done by the Joshua boy. When the demon realizes what's going on, it just gets even more enraged, calling them dirty religious clergymen who dared to go after the great Skeleton King's body. The demon is determined to kill them, so it launches yet another powerful attack, hoping to break through the barrier and finish them off for good. However, our boy has other plans, so he goes up against the demon as well, annoyed that it can't even recognize its master. The story resumes in the present timeline, where all the adults are still trying to figure out what really happened inside the treasury. They feel that there's no way a dragon would lie, but it's still difficult for them to believe that the baby was the one that brought the body of the Skeleton King out. Besides, they still can't figure out what Kina did in there. While the others are trying to come up with a theory, Riley approaches the Holy Dragon, pointing out how dangerous the ritual became for the kids. The spirit is taken aback by this confrontation, but the white-haired knight just goes on to explain how one of the 14 elite demons of the Skeleton King is too much for the children. With this in mind, he finally asks the dragon why it broke the seal of the demons, so the spirit reveals that Kina was the one who asked him to break it. Both Kina and the Pope are shocked when this comes out, but they're caught off guard for different reasons clearly. At this point, some of the other kids begin to narc on Kina, blaming him for everything and claiming that he forced them to go into the third chamber where they almost died. As you can imagine, most guardians are not happy to hear that one particular child is the reason why their children almost died inside a cave. They can't understand why a child of the papal house would do something like that, because they realize that things could have gotten really bad if Isaac hadn't taken care of the demons by himself. Seeing that the truth is out, they start to suggest that the little Joshua boy actually beat the Burrit child. It's quite amazing to think about, because nobody expected the toddler to be this strong, and it's now obvious that the Joshua household has been planning on rebuilding. Riley is really impressed with Isaac's performance, and while he's mentally commending the boy, the elders finally decide that it's time to take the demonic finger out of his mouth. They attempt to take it away from him with different tactics, but he's not ready to let go, so he just slaps their hands away, which leaves them wondering why a toddler is so strong. The reason Isaac is still sucking on that bone is because the mana inside it is so good. He's absorbing it so fast and doesn't even know what is happening. Just then, one of the elders returns, talking about how Isaac outdid himself and how overjoyed the matriarch will be. Riley agrees with the old lady, and then a crazy look appears on her face. Now that they have the Skeleton King's body, she feels that they can use it to track down his soul. As you can imagine, our boy doesn't really like the sound of this, because he had no idea that this is why they wanted to bring his body out so badly. If that's the case, then he pretty much just dug a big hole for himself, and it's starting to make a lot of sense why they desperately want that finger out of his mouth. They start reaching for the finger so that they can use tracking arts to locate the Skeleton King and rip him apart. At this point, Isaac begins to panic a little because he can now see that these guys are all crazy. As for the old geezers, all they can think about is how close they are to settling a 150-year-old grudge. Eventually, he just swallows the finger and sends the wolf spirit away, suggesting that they never see each other again. The story continues back in the Joshua mansion where the elders are desperately searching for the bone in his diapers. They're all anxious about the whole thing, and while they're busy racking their brains, our boy just sits in a corner, feeling confident that they will never find what they're looking for even if they search all day. After all, he's more concerned by what happened inside the treasury, and that's when we get to see another flashback of what went down back inside that cave. After the demon unleashes another attack to destroy the protective barrier, Isaac charges at it, feeling annoyed that it can't even recognize its master. Because of this, he doesn't hesitate to teach the demon a lesson by landing a mean punch right in its face to intercept its attack. The moment he makes contact with the beast, the demon senses the mana and realizes that this baby could actually be its master. The demon remembers how devastated it was when it heard the news that the great skeleton king had passed away. But even in that grief, it always has a feeling that its master would return to life. This is what the elite demon tells Isaac, and then suddenly begins to disappear as the ritual comes to an end. The demon tries to tell our boy that the others were captured, but that's all it can say before the flashback comes to an end. The story continues in the present with our boy wishing that he had stayed longer to talk with the elite demon because he had so many questions to ask. Unfortunately, since he couldn't, all he can remember is that the demon said they were captured by the papal house. He figures that he should look more into the matter, and while he's still plotting, his thought process is suddenly interrupted by Riley, who shoves a bottle in his face and tells him to poop so that they can probably get the finger. Apparently, the toddler still has the demonic finger in his system, so now his uncle is worried. The white-haired knight has been pumping him with laxatives hoping it would help, and our boy seems to be enjoying it. He even wants more of them, stronger ones in fact, so that he can destroy the family that's trying to kill his other identity. One of the other elders is extremely concerned because he's afraid of what the matriarch might do if she finds out. He feels that they might have to cut Isaac's stomach open just to get it, and there's a chance she will have all of them executed for letting something like that happen in the first place. In response, Riley simply tells the old man to calm down, assuring him that everything is going to be alright. But then again, the guy can't help but feel really worried because he knows that the matriarch has already cut open her own son's flank before. He's not sure, but he sincerely hopes that she'll go easy on her grandchild. Our boy had no idea that the matriarch cut her own child open before, so he's a little shaken by it. Just then, Whisper reminds him that Melissa went on a pilgrimage with the patriarch. Hearing this, Isaac is a bit relieved because he feels that it will be a while before she returns. So he figures that he has enough time to finish absorbing the mana and escape before she gets back. As soon as he comes up with this plan, Gowl barges into the room and tells Riley to follow him somewhere. The white-haired knight is reluctant at first, so the annoying uncle reveals that the matriarch summoned him. As you can imagine, this is a serious shock for our boy and his protective uncle. Riley can't believe that she's back already because he knows that she's never returned from a pilgrimage this early before. Hearing this, Isaac already knows that he's the reason for this anomaly. Now that he knows he's in danger, he begins to panic because he still hasn't absorbed all the mana yet, and knowing Melissa, he is convinced that she'll cut him open to get that finger. The scene shifts, and the next thing we see is a mountain of treasure piled up in a room, and the elders wonder if all these gifts are for Isaac alone. This is also when Gowl reveals that he was just messing with Riley earlier, teasing him for being a chicken. Apparently, the matriarch isn't actually back, and so the knight can finally catch his breath. Gowl explains that they only received a voice message from her stating that she is on her way back. That's not completely good news though, and Isaac is pissed at Gowl for making them so anxious. In other news, the papal house were the ones who sent the gold as tribute, but the elders rejected them immediately, claiming that the gifts should be sold to someone else as stolen goods. While they were being all dramatic, the messenger from the papal house just listens to everything they're saying. Soon enough, the messenger reveals that he was sent by the papal house, and informs them that the emperor is showing a lot of interest in the child. He also tenders the apology from the papal house by offering the tribute as a sign of gratitude. However, he can tell that the Joshua house isn't interested in the gift, so he makes another offer that he feels will change their minds. The messenger suddenly takes out a small case and reveals its shiny content to them, claiming that this gift is from the cardinal, who says it will be useful to Isaac. The object inside the case is clearly something special because the others can't even take their eyes off it. It's an artifact called the Triple Crown, and they almost can't believe that they're actually looking at it. Anyway, our boy is not so impressed because he doesn't even know what the object is. So, Whisper casually explains that it's basically a medal, a dirty little trinket engraved with the Pope's emblem. The elders are so excited about the medal from the Pope, but even Sir Riley doesn't look like he cares at all. The messenger pleads with him to accept the gift, reminding him that it belongs to Isaac. Even though the boy doesn't care about the medal, he still feels that they should just hand it to him and not his uncle since it belongs to him. The white-haired knight is so pissed when the messenger insists on giving him the medal and not the baby. The elders are equally upset that he gave Isaac's medal to a family member, so they start scolding him. Apparently, this is a really big offense because giving the medal to the family means that the true recipient of the medal. This little revelation leaves our boy in shock for a second, and while he's trying to process it, the messenger quickly starts explaining himself. He tells the household not to misunderstand the cardinal's intentions and explains that he only asks that the family receive the gift because the baby is so young. Unfortunately, the elders aren't buying this. One of them points out the ribbon on the gift with a sunflower on it, ranting about how the papal house should know that the sunflower is handed to fallen soldiers to honor their heroic deeds. At this point, it's clear that the cardinal knew exactly what he was playing at, and Isaac is pissed that they want him dead so badly. The elders are equally furious that the bastards would dare to blatantly mock them for the curse of Joshua. Cowell tries to calm the elders down, but they're not having any of it, so the friendly mediator reminds them that they shouldn't let the matter escalate because it will bring trouble to the Joshua family. Even though Cowell is playing it cool and trying to make peace on the outside, deep down, he's really disgusted by the cardinal. At the same time, he's glad that Riley and Isaac will no longer be able to run wild like before. With this in mind, he encourages his younger brother to accept the gift, and even though the knight tries to protest, the fifth son tells him not to make a fuss. The messenger then presents the gift to Isaac, hoping to get a good reaction, but then all of a sudden, the blue smoke coming from within the case becomes a lot larger until it erupts into an explosion that catches everyone by surprise. They look up and are shocked to see the holy flame hovering above their heads. The messenger is so confused because he has no idea who would be able to use the holy flame. But then they all take a look around and realize that the person responsible for this is none other than the overpowered baby in their family. Things are getting spicier with each chapter, and it seems as if people are slowly going to realize the absolute monster that's hiding between them disguised as a baby. In any case, if you guys have been following this story so far and enjoying it, please be sure to let me know in the comments below. And as always, make sure you're subscribed if you want to stay notified for future uploads. Until next time.